Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! everyone. Welcome to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, welcoming you to another stream. We're back. You know, I was doing some math, and last week we streamed 3 times, and the week before that we streamed 3 times, and I think the average duration of those streams was a little over 3.5 hours each. So in the last 2 weeks, this channel produced, and you know, I had guests on, I had Bob on, I had Donnie on, but in the last 2 weeks, this channel produced roughly 22 hours of content. And I like to think that while we may go on tangents, there's not a lot of dead air here. There's not a lot of, points where I'm walking away from the camera, right? Or it's, you know, we've had some issues, of course, some tech issues, but for the most part, right? I mean, that's 22 solid hours. The average YouTube video is about 15 minutes. So if I was a usual YouTube producer making one video a week, 15 minutes long, then it would take me over 1.5 years. It would take me like 1 year, 7-8 months to produce 22 hours of content. So I apologize to all of our fans out there, because that's just too much for anybody to watch. I don't know who watches it. I don't know why you watch it. I don't know how you watch it, but you do. And I would say thank you, but I would also say, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? I don't know. Anyways, welcome everyone to Night's Last Call. We tonight are going to be heading back to the world of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. But let me clarify that. Obviously, we have the remastered, which came out this year. Gosh, it seems like that was forever ago. Like, it's like the remaster feels like it came out 3 years ago, doesn't it? It really does. It feels like it came out 3 years ago. It's crazy. Wow, crazy. Anyways, we got the remaster. It came out this year, and we haven't really talked about it because my last Pathfinder 2 campaign ended right before the remaster came out, when it was all kind of up in the air and being discussed. And as a result, I don't want to talk about something I don't have the experience with.
Thaddeus tipped $10. Thanks for being a content machine.
Well, thank you, Thaddeus, for that $10 tip, and I'm glad you appreciate it, sir. I'm thankful for that. Yeah, I mean, again, it's just, let me be very frank with all of you. I always talked about RPGs this much. I talked about them with my friends. I talked about them online. I talked about them in person. I talked about them on Discord. I was always talking about role-playing games this much. So it's not actually a new thing for me. It's more of a new thing for you all. Thank you, London.
London tipped $10. Just your everyday strong endorsement of Colkin RFC. Also, cheers to 2 years of New Dawn play-by-post. Thanks, Derek, for being host to the game and its players. We appreciate you and the Knights.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's crazy that even something like New Dawn is that old. Thank you, London, for that. That's a very generous tip from you. Yeah, so what London's referring to is we have like an entire sub-community within our Discord community, within our Patreon, of folks who play by post. And for those, who may not be familiar with this, this used to be a kind of a popular way of playing role-playing games back in the 80s, when it was actually play by post, right? Play by mail. Flying Buffalo very famously did these massive play by mail campaigns. Well, nowadays we just do it using the power of Discord, but it's really convenient and great for people who just don't have the time or the energy or the social energy to sit down and play a, face-to-face or online face-to-face game, to be active, to be on point for 4 hours. It could be draining, but also sometimes it's not a possibility for people who have really busy lives and really busy schedules. So this is it's a really interesting way that they've managed to kind of figure out a way to play some of their favorite games, including things like Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but also play by post games of PBTA games and Forge in the Dark games. And it's really interesting how for some folks that is an ideal way. And plus, it gives you more time to craft a response and really think about the descriptions and the narrations, and maybe really, concentrate on some of the storytelling elements that you don't feel as much put on the spot. And we have a fantastic RPG bot, the Sage bot, which, kind of handles a lot of the interactions and luckily has sort of been updated as per our needs, I think, as time has gone on. So all in all, it's just it's a great little sub community within our community. We have a couple different sub communities, and I'm very happy to have you, London. London is kind of the MC of the play by post community and our moderator for it. Anyways, well, thank you, Thaddeus. Thank you, London. Yeah, Lance, exactly. A great start. Just, shitting on everybody. We are here for the song. Yeah, Trev, go. The song. So here's the thing with the song. Let me be honest with you. This is not going to surprise anybody. The lyrics are finished. In fact, I've sang them before, although I would probably still want to tweak them a little bit. But I don't want to just sing it. My goal was to find the Pokemon music, right? And to actually, use a little auto-tune and actually put in and make at least a produced track. So, that is, yeah, I made an Eldamon theme song, for God knows what purpose, because, it was stupid and we were trolling, but, it had, it was kind of making fun of Eldamon, kind of making fun of Pathfinder 2, kind of making fun of D20, 20 level based games, classic par for the course for us. Okay. So tonight, the reason we're here, we haven't talked about Pathfinder 2 in a while, but I wanted to go back and there's been some interest from our people on the Patreon to talk a little bit more about Roll for Combat's BattleZoo Eldamon. And the reason that I think that this is a good idea, and one of the reasons I want to talk about it is because to me, I know this is going to sound crazy, but to me, this is probably some of the most compelling and interesting game mechanics that I've seen come out of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I liked what the Kineticist did. I think that's a really cool class. I liked what the Thaumaturge did. I think that's a really good class. But for the most part, even with the remaster, I think that the design of a lot of the Pathfinder 2 classes, while totally acceptable, I think leads to stagnant play patterns. And they're very commonly and very often, there is just the best move to make. You can make that move kind of over and over and over again if that is in your proclivity to do so. There's not really necessarily a reason to deviate from that sort of best case scenario. And, sometimes you'll end up with abilities. And I think one of the things that Pathfinder 2 players learn as they play the system more is that when you first start off the game, it's very tempting to just say, I'm going to take this really good ability and I'm going to take this really good ability. Why would I ever take that ability? It's super situational. And then what you figure out is you don't need that many abilities that are universally applicable because you only need a couple of them because those are going to be your best moves and you're going to go to them again and again and again and again. And so that leaves 6 to 8 feats that you're not really using ever. And it would probably be better for you to have a very super situational feat that at least when that situation came up could make you feel rewarded. Now, in all honesty, those situations may only come up, once or twice a campaign. That is the reality of the situation. And it depends on how long you play and it depends on all these other factors, of course. But, I know that sometimes you look at, a feat and you say, I'm going to take this very kind of specific pigeonhole niche feat. And it's, to go down that level of rabbit hole. Mark. Oh, well, Mark, is this the key? Is this how we break through? Is this how we make it to the mainstream? Mark, thank you very much. Who am I to deny the power of bribery? Here's some cash to help support the fully produced version of the song. I would love a copy, heart. All right. You know what? The holidays are coming up. Fine. I'll do it. I'll make the fully produced version. This is one of those things that I just regret ever putting it out there. And now I feel like I'm totally on the hook. And before it was just I'm just going to make the lyrics and I'll sing it on RFC or something like that. And again, I did that one time, but now it's all right, now I'm going to actually go ahead and produce it. Maybe I'll bring Ben in. He can do some audio mixing. Mark, thank you. and also, damn you to hell. Thank you, Mark. Well, I did say that the super chat goal was more Eldamon, gotta catch them all. I wasn't really defining what that meant by more Eldamon. Apparently it means more produced content. Yeah, exactly. Well, barrister lore outside of, I'm not even talking about skills really. I'm just talking about that in Pathfinder 2, when you're a spellcaster, you've got your go-to spells that are pretty much the best spells to cast. And sure, there are some very hyper niche spells, and you might have them in your repertoire if you're a spontaneous caster, or maybe you happen to put them into your slots that day as a prepared caster. But very frequently, they're not really going to come up that much. And so you're just going to more than likely just kind of rely on the sort of play patterns. And to be honest with you, this is in its most egregious state, I think, with the kineticist. Because the kineticist basically can just do these abilities over and over and over and over again. It's kind of easy to just have your round 1 look like your round 2, look like your round 3. And, sure, there's, the overload, or I always forget the term of it, but the one that makes you lose your kinetic aura, overcharge, overload. But, a lot of times those are kind of underwhelming anyways. And I've noticed that some people seem to stay away from those. And, occasionally it does lead to some interesting gameplay. And I think that's really cool. I think I'm really here for that. But I think the biggest downside to a lot of those overflow, thank you, Sean. I think the biggest downside to those overflow is that, and again, I'm not the kineticist expert. I have not, Bob played a kineticist. He played a He played a wood earth kineticist in our Abomination Vaults campaign. So I got to see a good chunk of that, but I have not seen all of it. But a lot of the overflows tend to be 3 actions. And just in general, I don't like 3 action activities, spells, name it, in Pathfinder 2nd edition. It kind of feels like it's defeating the purpose of the system, which is to give you all of these dynamic actions that you can kind of combine and provide you with that tactical flexibility. So I'm not a big fan of 3 action anything. Another reason why I don't like meta magic. Most spells are 2 actions. Meta magic adds a 3rd. It's like, come on, I'm already, as a spellcaster, feeling like I'm being kind of screwed out of the 3 action economy. So now you have to make it worse, where if I want to add 30 feet of range, or I want to add, an extra 5 feet to my AoE, now I have to literally do nothing for the entire turn. And so, yeah, anyways, that's Pathfinder 2. It's a totally great system. It totally works. But I find that, after playing it for 2 or 3 years, I've been a player, I've been a game master. When did we start playing? 2019? Well, it came out late 2019, but so like 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. So 4 years. Because I didn't really play it this year. I find that the gameplay patterns do tend to get kind of stagnant, or at least they do in my game. When I'm running the game, when I'm playing in the game. I know that my fighter in Smith's campaign was, very much, he was a dual weapon wielder, and it was a lot of, dual strike. And then, if he hit with both of them or whatever, he would do the rend, from the 2 weapon warrior archetype or whatever. I think his turns felt very boxed in. And that was like the best thing he could do, multiplied by the tyranny of strike. And, there was just this, it felt very repetitive. My cleric, same way, felt very, very, very repeated. There was only, there's hundreds of divine spells, but as a prepared caster, especially not a repertoire caster, not a spontaneous caster, but as a prepared caster, I don't have the luxury of all of these, throwing of these, crazy spells into my prep list, because, there's good spells and I need to take them. And then those are the spells that I'm going to cast over and over and over and over again. So anyways, and of course you could say, what about scrolls? And scrolls are important. Scrolls do help a lot. But scrolls only exacerbate the action economy problem, because now scrolls turn everything that you want to do basically into a 3 action spell, because it's 1 action to pull out the scroll, and then it's 2 actions to cast the spell. So we're kind of back at the 3 action problem. So, and because of that, we've talked about this at length. Is it still true? I don't know. You know, I haven't broken down the remaster. We are going to do that, by the way. We got a couple patrons, because I don't want to talk about the remaster and talk about it like, you know, talking on my ass, because I've not played with the new classes. I've not played with Player Core 1. I've not played with Player Core 2. I've read Player Core 1. I've read most of Player Core 2. And I don't have the kind of reps with it as a player or a GM. But we have folks on our Patreon who play Pathfinder 2 multiple times per week. They play home games. They play Northern Reaches games, Southern Beaches games. They play Path Builder Extreme games. So we have some folks who have literally hundreds of hours with the new system, just remaster. So we're going to get some of them onto the stream. I'm going to act more as a moderator, really, and we'll talk about those. But before, kind of while the remaster was sort of in works or coming out, the folks over at Roll for Combat released BattleZoo Eldamon. And, you know, call it what it is. You know, Eldamon is an homage. It's a love letter to Pokemon. All right. It's extra dimensional, cute monsters that, you know, somebody can be a trainer for, and they can bring them forth and they can fight for you. So it's basically Pokemon, but it's done in the Pathfinder 2 system. And I think there's a 5e version as well. You know, on the surface, this is, you know, just seems kind of like a kiddie throwaway thing. But lest we forget that Mark Seifter is involved with this. And as a result of this, Mark Seifter created a very unique approach to each of the different element types, so that not only let's holistically, the system of Eldamon, of these elemental energy types, fire, frost, you know, wood, life, death, you know, light, darkness. Number one, the structure of the game is set up in a way that I think encourages and rewards good, dynamic, tactical play, right? And, you know, we'll get into this when we get into the book, but specifically your powers, if you want to call them that, in Eldamon, I think they are called powers. You could think of them a little bit like if you've played Magic the Gathering, or if you've played Gloomhaven, where if you use your power, that power becomes tapped, or that power sort of gets put in the discard pile, okay? And you do not have access to that power anymore. Instead, all the elements have a refresh power. Now, the refresh power on the surface isn't that powerful, but you can, through tactical play, you could set up a situation where that refresh power can be very powerful if you play smartly and if you play intelligently. And then when you use that refresh power, all of your expended powers come back into the fold. So what this means is, let's say you have that one power, your best power, right? And you want to use it over and over and over again. Well, I could use it, right? And then I could use my refresh power, and then I could use the power again. But that's going to make me pretty inefficient, right? That's going to make me not as effective as I could be, especially because that refresh power has the potential to actually be very impactful to the battle. And to be clear, I'm speaking kind of strictly about combat for most of this. Because let's face it, combat is where a lot of us spend our time, number one. Number two, even if you don't have that much combat in your Pathfinder game, that is still going to eat up the lion's share of your Pathfinder experience, because it just takes a lot longer to do an involved, intricate combat, a 4 or 5 round combat, than it would take you to do a shorter combat, or a shorter scene, like an exploration scene. Whipplestein coming in with $20. No, nothing to say. Nothing to say, Whipple. Just excited to be here. Excited to talk about Pathfinder 2. But thank you, Whipple. That's very nice of you. So Roll for Combat's here. He's saying, sing the song, Derek. So overall, this has created an approach, and we'll also talk about the reaction. Every element gets a reaction. I think reactions, you know, if I were still making a ton of Pathfinder 2 content, I would make, you know, one of our top videos of all time was called the 3-Action Economy, which I can't even remember who did it, but I don't know if they still make videos, but that one channel went and made a comic cartoon version of this. But I would actually say that Pathfinder 2 is actually a 4-action economy, right? Because 4-action, Eldamon, Northern Reaches when Karama, anything is possible now, buddy. Anything is possible. In fact, we joked about making it available for Southern Beaches, but we did not. But yes, exactly. Thank you, Karama. And Whipplestein says, on the move, but always have to stop in, even if briefly, for Pathfinder 2nd Edition content. Well, Whipple, we're going to have a lot of Pathfinder 2 content coming up over the next couple of weeks into December. We're going to have some folks on who, from our Northern Reaches, Southern Beaches crew to talk about Pathfinder 2 Remaster. We want to talk specifically about the game. We also want to do a, who did it better version, right? Who did it better? Pathfinder 2 to Remaster or D&D 2014 to D&D 2024, and talk about some of the ways that the game changed for the better, for the worse, and kind of who had the better glow up, if you will. And then third, we're going to talk about War of the Immortals. And specifically, I want to talk about the Mythic combat rules. And it looks like we're going to be doing more Eldamon content because we've already hit that tip goal, or stream goal. So that's great. So thank you, Whipplestein. So anyways, 4 actions. Reactions are very important. And anybody who's been a member of our community for any amount of time knows that we have talked at length about how important reactions are to turn-based initiative systems, aka round-based, you go, the monster goes, your PC goes, that other PC goes, right? You get 1 action a turn. Reactions are so important. They draw you into the game. They keep you paying attention. Even when it's not your turn, they keep you looking for it. And so good reactions can really help with that. They make your character much more involved and go a long way towards doing a lot of heavy lifting to make your character not feel as stagnant as they do in a traditional initiative system. There's a reason why classes like the fighter or the champion who start off the game with awesome reactions, not just reactions, but awesome reactions, I think can be potentially very fun classes to play because you feel like a much more dynamic character. So structurally, all of the BattleZoo Eldamon classes / elements play out really well. But then, so that's like the top level. But then below that, you have the actual elemental powers themselves. And each one is different. They play out differently. They ask you to do different tactical things. They feel thematically tied in to that element. And as a result, especially if you are an Eldamon trainer, okay, aka, Ash, and you've got 3 different Eldamon, right? And each Eldamon is a different element, right? You've got your electricity Eldamon, you've got your fire Eldamon, you have your water Eldamon. Well, those 3 Eldamon aren't just 3 different piles of powers, maybe with different traits or tags or damage types on them. No, each of those Eldamon plays out very differently because the way that the fire power set plays out and what it asks of you and what it encourages you from play is different than, say, what the water does or what the darkness does or what the light does. Additionally, because of this, there are some power sets which are considered low complexity. Kind of hit it with a stick, and it's not asking you to really figure it out well. But some power sets are high complexity, and it's kind of, if you want to give, you got to get, if you want to get, you got to give. And those are power sets where I think if played well, they can unlock a lot of power, but if played poorly, could potentially leave you wanting. So I like that kind of, dare I say it, ivory tower design. And while I do think that in general, the classes and the powers are very approachable in BattleZoo Eldamon, I personally think that this is a little bit more complicated than a lot of standard classes would be, and so as a result, I think it's just a really, really good design. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look, for starters, at the core classes. And then we're going to get into at least 1 or 2 or 3 of the energy types, element types. And I really want to kind of talk about how these things are structured and how they play out. I do not have my green screen. It's actually out of my room right now. I was cleaning up and I forgot to bring it in here. So I am just going to shrink me down so I get out of the way. There we go. So Just reading here, catching in here with the chat. Let's see. What is SMT? Oh, Shin Megamin Tensei. People were talking about that today on the Discord. I don't even know what it is. Welcome, Phil. Knox. Great. Awesome. Fantastic. We need to get Bob back in a onesie and an Eldamon live play. I want to see Derek dressed up as a Squirrel Lash. Squirrel Lash is the GOAT. He's never far from my side. Hey, how's you doing? So anyways, London says it's Ivory Tower on the turn decisions, not in the build so much, which I prefer. Right. The decision of, okay, I have these 4 or 5 or 6 powers, and I have my refresh power. What order do I want to use these in to get the biggest bang for my buck? And then when do I want to use my refresh power? When do I need those power sets back? When do I not need those powers back? And can I figure out a tactical plan that will enable me to get the biggest bang for my buck? And Don Pokey says, ooh, those high complexity power sets, my heart fell in love the moment I puzzled together how they were all meant to be played and all the choices. Right. And I'm not going to admit that, I'm not going to say that I have it figured out or anything like that, because, I think a lot of these things are probably, fairly complex and deserve that sort of time and attention given into it. So real quick, I'm just going to kind of look here at if you're not familiar with Eldamon at all, there are 2 classes. One is called the Eldamon Trainer, which is, your Pokemon trainer, and they are going to basically be able to summon these Eldamon. And we're not going to get too much into the details about the Eldamon, but needless to say, they're extra dimensional creatures. They really can't die so much. You can phase them in, and when they come phasing in to fight, you kind of phase out, so they kind of take your place, and then they fight for you, right? They fight in your stead. So the Eldamon Trainer can go around and collect different Eldamon. And the game has a massive list of Eldamon. And, obviously there's more to be made, maybe at some point in the future. But you can see here just a massive list of Eldamon. And each Eldamon has a elemental type as well as a sort of animal type. So there's Terrapoof, who is the air bat Eldamon. But then there's Larvapor, who is the air moth Eldamon. Now, Terrapoof and Larvapor each have their own sort of unique abilities or things that make them, Terrapoof, and what makes them Larvapor. But what they share is this air elemental set. So that means let me be very clear about this. Eldamon Trainer is for your real hardcore Pathfinder 2 players. I'm sorry to say it, but now I understand that, maybe I'm underestimating folks, but I do think that this is a very, it can be simple, but I think that this is where you get to that sort of nth degree of complexity, because the Eldamon Trainer not only has to sort of, when you think about them building out their stable of Eldamon, right? It's not enough to just say, oh, I want to make sure that I have the air power set in my sort of stable of Eldamon. You have to kind of think about which air Eldamon do I want, available. And so as a result, it's do you want the death dog or do you want the death cat, right? And so it's one thing to have, okay, I want to have a death power type in my stable, but it's another thing to think of, okay, but do I want more Pup's abilities, or do I want Grima's abilities? So again, there's a lot of choices and a lot of decisions that go into this. So the Eldamon Trainer not only has to pick the sort of the elemental power that they want, they have to pick which animal they want. The elemental avatar is much simpler in that respect. The elemental avatar, basically, instead of having, summoning these, Eldamon, the elemental avatar works a lot like, a Bender from Avatar, or from a Kineticist in some ways, which, shouldn't surprise anybody. Mark Seifter made the original Kineticist from Pathfinder 1. The elemental avatar works a lot like those, where it's you're kind of a, maybe a quasi martial arts discipline type person, and you sort of harness, these elemental energies. And so instead of, summoning Terrapoof, who's going to go and do these air powers. The person doing the air bending, the person doing the air attacks is you. And so the elemental avatar is actually, I think, the simpler of the two, because the elemental avatar doesn't have that double layer of like, you have to pick your elemental type and you have to pick the different Eldamon, right? Not just the least of which is the idea of these Eldamon is much like Pokemon. There's this idea that you want to go and collect all these Eldamon, right? Because, the more that you have, the more access to options that you have. So it's really, there's a lot of tech here. It's now, I'm not trying to say that the avatar is a bad class. I'm just saying I think it is a less complex class. All right. And then there's a multi-class archetype. God help you. I don't even want to know what that looks like. So then we get down to the elemental powers, right? And these work a lot like, the kineticists invocations, infusions. I don't remember the terminology. They're more than feats, right? They're less than spells is kind of where I would put them. And as a result, you could see that there's a variety of elemental powers. It's air, darkness, death, earth, electricity, fire, force, ice, life, light, mind, water, wood. And then to throw, some more gasoline on the fire, there's also a set of universal powers, which are, that any of the Eldamon can obtain. So when you're making your, when you've got Chillot, your ice otter, so not only are you going to be choosing from the ice powers, you're also going to be choosing from the universal powers. And keep in mind, Chillot, the ice otter itself, has some special abilities. And then don't forget that your Eldamon Trainer is still going to be getting a feat every other level, a class feat that is going to add to that complexity. So there's a lot of moving parts with these classes. But to a certain extent, I think, a lot of people talk about why they come to Pathfinder 2. And while I understand that this was made for 5e as well, totally understand that. RFC is very good about that. They actually do want to make money, so they make stuff for 5e as well as Pathfinder 2. The fact of the matter is I just think of them as a Pathfinder 2 content party, even though they obviously make it for both. That being said, I think, quite frankly, the reason why people play Pathfinder 2nd edition is because they are, they want the more complex game. There's a reason why I don't, why I lean towards more highly complex card games or more highly complex board games. I like that complexity. I like something that I can really sink my teeth into, that I can really, invest and build, time with and feel like my time investment is worth it. So I think by and large, Pathfinder 2 does tend to appeal to that more, mechanics-centric type player. Generally, I get it. There are people who are playing Pathfinder 2 and they want to do nothing but tell stories. I don't know why they picked Pathfinder 2, but here we are. So that's kind of the generic basic overview. Let me see if anything here saying chat, if I said something horrible here. Oh, absolutely, London. It's very much, it plays out a lot like Magic the Gathering, or it plays out a lot out like Gloomhaven as well, which I like both of those games. Sims 3 says Eldamon Trainer is not for the faint of heart unless you have all the powers on cards, then maybe. Sims 3 brings up an excellent point. And even I think the book, it says this. And if the book doesn't say this, then Mark and Steven have definitely said this. Mark has definitely said this on their stream, which is, like when we played 4th edition D&D, our characters had, a dozen or more powers. We used to keep them on index cards, and we would literally tap them or turn them face down, or we would, use a dry erase marker and put an X over them inside of like a sleeve so that we knew that they were expended. I don't think I would play this class without some kind of power deck. I really wouldn't. Now, if that makes you vomit inside your mouth, then this class isn't for you. But I love that. When I used to play D&D 3rd edition, one of my favorite books, probably one of the greatest books of all time, is the Tome of Battle Book of Nine Swords. And if we're being completely honest, the reason why I love Eldamon so much is because its design is some of the closest that I have seen to Book of Nine Swords. And that's a totally good thing. But yeah, But yeah, the way the powers refresh, it could be exchanged, lends themselves to cards very well. And I completely agree with you. And yes, RFC did make 5e versions of this, which is pretty great. Let's see here. Yes, I'm sure you'll get to it, but you also have multiple Eldamon, I assume. Yes, I think you start the game with 3, I want to say. And you can have, you could theoretically, I mean, Nox, you want to talk about levels, okay? Levels. And again, I will get into it when we get into the class. But your character could accumulate dozens of Eldamon over the course of the game. Think of those as like Eldamon in your spell book. Then each day when you do your daily prep, I think you can add like 3 of them or 4 of them maybe into your sort of slots. So each day you have to pick like which Eldamon are going to be basically, you know, in your Pokeballs at the ready. So that is already a huge strategic decision, depending on what type of, you know, adversaries that you're expecting to go against, depending on what kind of access to what kind of abilities that you want to have. And your character could potentially have, you know, a dozen or more of these Eldamon as collected, but they can only bring a certain number of them into the adventuring day, right? And then when combat starts, okay, the again, they learn, like, look, Mark's a smart guy, okay? Like, if you know the remaster, you know, one of the things that we all, okay, let's go back to 2020, 2021. You know, one of the things that I always used to complain about here were action taxes. And I used to complain about how, like, the barbarian is basically being taxed in action. They have to rage to even do anything, basically. They're a crappy class without any abilities if they don't rage. So you're forcing them to basically get 2 actions in the first round. Why? Like, it's what you need to play the game. And sure enough, in the remaster, they got rid of that. And there are still some action taxes that I would have liked to see gone. I'd like to see monks be able to drop into a stance at the beginning of combat for free. I'd like to see, rangers be able to hunt prey or whatever for free. But for the most part, Mark completely understands this. And so when you're an Eldamon trainer, you basically can phase in one of your Eldamon that you have sort of in your prep area, basically as you roll initiative. So that means every time a fight starts, you need to observe the fight, look at what the situation is, and decide, is this a fight where I'm going to need to bring out, you know, Feedy, the life snake Eldamon, or do I need to bring out, Clorse, the pale horse Eldamon, or perhaps it's time to bring out good old Squirrelash, the fire squirrel Eldamon, right? Like, do we need DPS for this fight? Are we fighting a bunch of maybe a bunch of creatures that I need more AoE capability? Maybe this is a fight for Squirrelash. But if I think I'm going to have to be more of a healer, I don't know where my Feedy is. I have a Feedy somewhere. Dang. Then I could bring out Feedy. And not saying this like lets you change your class every fight, but it kind of lets you change your class every fight. So it's crazy. And then once Squirrelash is out or Feedy is out, then you have to start making the round by round decision of which power to use. Should I refresh? Should I not refresh? How do I want to use, what order do I want to use my powers in to get the biggest bang for my buck? Okay. So it's very complex, very rewarding. Now, some of these simpler Eldamon, you know, you just bring them out and do my attacks and it's totally fine. But I think if you play well and you play smart and you kind of lean into that sort of ivory tower design, I think you can be really rewarded mechanically with these abilities. All right. Let's see here. Squin says, personally, I find life to be in my top 3. I just love the mixture of healing and near cosmic horror. It's a good mix. It's a good mix. Yeah, look how cutesy they are. Oh, they're so cute. So we got a little story here, an introduction, and a bunch of beautiful art. We'll skip all that. And it talks about, like, how do you add this to your campaign and how do you not make it be completely disruptive? And, you know, there's a lot of assumptions to be made there, but I'm not really going to get too deep into that. All right. Like how you acquire Eldamon and how much personality they should have and, you know, all this other stuff here. Right. But they give you the background. We're here for the mechanics. All right. And they've got random charts, you know, to find random, you know, Eldamon if you want to kind of like, you know, generate them randomly and give them personalities. And, you know, they can really be kind of like, you know, kind of like the way Bulbasaur and, you know, was, you know, kind of rude, not rude, but he was kind of grumpy, you know, and, you know, Pikachu was very loyal and all this other stuff. So, all right. So here's the Eldamon Trainer. And again, we're not going to get into all the feats. You can buy the book. By the way, I have a link to Roll for Combat's website if you want. If you want to pick it up, the PDF. So the Eldamon Trainer is a class that, you know, just like anybody else here, you know, is 8 hit points. It's expert in 1 save, trained in some others, got some skills, right? Nothing that I'm not going to get too much into it. But like any other class in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, right, you start off at first level with your initial proficiencies and your ancestry and background feats, and then you get, you know, your Eldamon set of core abilities that let you do the Eldamon thing. And then after that, you get a feat at level 2, you get a feat at level 4, you get a feat at level 6, level 8, just like anybody else. All right. But what's cool is on the levels where you don't get feats, you're gaining more Eldamon powers, right? And of course, you're also still getting general feats, ancestry feats, attribute boosts, the whole 9 yards, skill feats, all increases to your proficiencies, the whole 9 yards. But what you're going to end up having is a really cool progression of gain a feat, gain new powers, 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 which is the way that spellcasters work in Pathfinder 2. And I find it to be very fulfilling. I think it's really awesome if you get a feat at level 4 and then, oh, it's level 5. Cool. I get new powers. Level 6, I get a feat. Level 7, new powers. And I find that back and forth to be, my only complaint about casters is they don't get a feat at level 1 for some reason because Paizo hates them. But your Eldamon Trainer does, and that's what's important. And again, if anybody has any interesting questions, exactly, the feat is usually the feat as a power. Not so here. Now, to be clear, this should remind you somewhat of the Kineticist, and there is a certain, maybe not with the Eldamon Trainer, but with the Elemental Avatar, there certainly is a little bit of overlap. But for the most part, I think you'll find that the powers are quite satisfying, I find, without being too broken or overpowered. All right. So let's get into the weeds a little bit. If you have thoughts, comments, or questions, let me know. We're going to get to one page where we show the elemental types, and I'm going to do a poll, and I'm going to let you all vote which ones we want to break into. All right. So you have this Eldamon power, right, set of, you get a feat, you get Eldamon powers, you get elemental assistance, elemental effusion, and trained Eldamon. So trained Eldamon is the sort of the core of your class, right? You have a deep metaphysical link to Eldamon that than others, allowing you to connect with them on a deeper level than most. This allows you to train Eldamon and even to swap your personal phase with them, phasing out of the material world so your Eldamon can phase in. You begin at first level with 3 Eldamon, which can be common Eldamon of your choice or other Eldamon that you have access to. You can befriend additional Eldamon as normal, and there's a whole subsystem for making friends with Eldamon. Each day during your daily prep, choose a number of Eldamon equal to 3 or your key attribute modifier, whichever is less. So by default, for any sort of bonuses if there are bonuses from feats or something like that, basically you're going to pick 3, right? Most of the time, your key attribute stat is not going to be less than 3. So, if you do have a 14 charisma, God help you. But for the most part, you're going to have 3. So this is the thing where you're basically picking, if you could think of it, all of your Eldamon are your friends, but only these 3 are sort of linked to you for that day to be able to phase in on the dot. And that's cool. I like that because that's a level of strategy. Which Eldamon do I want to bring today? You spend extra time with those Eldamon, preparing to swap your phase with them throughout the day. Your Eldamon gain levels alongside you as you train them, increasing to match your level whenever you level up. So when you level up, your Eldamon level up. It's unlikely to befriend an Eldamon of higher level than you, and even if you do, you can't share your phase with them. AKA, you can't be level 1 and go befriend a level 15 Eldamon and summon in this uber powerful thing. Due to your metaphysical connection to your Eldamon, when you've swapped your personal phase with them, you share multiple attack penalties and actions, although you normally can't act. And you can use your hero points on their behalf. Look, sometimes Pathfinder 2 doesn't want to admit it, but it is a gamist game. And sometimes they bend over backwards to try to appease the simulationist hawks. The fact of the matter is, for almost all intents and purposes, this is not like a summoner. Okay, where a summoner has them and their Eldamon, and then they get this pool of 4 actions, right, that they can kind of share, and they've got that weird split action ability, and then the sorcerer or the summoner is still there, and the Eldamon is still there, and they share the hit points, and you're moving 2 things. For the most part, this is not that. This is very much like my character is there at the start of the fight. The doors kick open, right? And a bunch of mitflits come running in. And my character basically goes, Squirrel Lash, I choose you, and throws down their imaginary Pokeball. And there's like an explosion of light. My character vanishes. And in its place is Squirrel Lash in its battle form, right? Ready to basically take all my actions. And I can spend hero points as them and everything like that. Now, I like that a lot better. I find that the summoner is a overly complex class to play. It's a little confusing. Act as 1, I think, is very weirdly worded. And it creates this very weird dichotomy where you're like, who is the character here? Is a summoner the character? Is the Eldamon the character? And while I do think people like Strat have proven that it can be a very powerful class, I'm not saying it's not powerful. It's just, it's not that much of a concern. So, so Ayla says, a part of me wishes they would just be more honest and say, since the game has to be balanced, you still suffer map. The most important thing is you share multiple attack penalties with your creature, but you know what? You're not going to be making attacks. When you're phased out, you're basically completely out of the game. So even though you're sharing your multiple attack penalties, it's easier just to think of it as your PC is gone and in its place is your Eldamon. Okay? So the whole we share a multiple attack penalty thing, it doesn't really even mention, because you usually don't even get to act at all. So, all right. Eldamon aren't the same as mortal creatures, so they don't die. An Eldamon that reaches 0 hit points doesn't become unconscious or dying. They just phase out if they were phased in and become unresponsive. An Eldamon that takes any amount of damage recovers all of their hit points after being phased out after an encounter, unless they were reduced to 0 hit points. If they were reduced to 0 hit points by an effect other than a death effect, they recover all of their hit points after being phased out after the encounter for at least 1 minute. If reduced to 0 hit points by a death effect, they still don't die, but it does take them 1 hour. What this basically means is, don't worry about it. Your Eldamon can't die. Okay. If they go to 0, they phase out, and basically you're going to have to bring in a new one. And for the most part, even if it just does go to 0 hit points, all you have to spend is 1 minute and they're completely ready to go for the next fight. So it totally just accepts that, look, we understand treat wound spam thing is a thing. Why are we even still doing this? The game expects us to be at full hit points. Let's just be at full hit points. Can we just all admit that? Can we all just be at full hit points? And this game says, yeah. All right. You also gain the phase Eldamon activity, and your Eldamon gain the tug conduit action. So phase Eldamon is 2 actions. All right. And this is how you know that the person designing it understands how the game is working. Okay. For 2 actions, you switch your phase with your Eldamon. Choose one of your Eldamon that you've prepared. That's one of your 3 Eldamon, which must be adjacent to you or in your square and must be your level or lower, and phase it fully onto the material plane in its battle form, or its evolved battle form, if it's capable of taking that form. In exchange, you become phased out. While Eldamon can act more freely in their natural phase, mortals weren't intended to exist in such a state. While out of phase, you cannot act, unless you have an ability that specifically allows you to act while phased out, aka your PC is just on the sidelines. You're out of action. Now, you might say, well, this is terrible. This means that you talked about an action tax. So you're saying at the start of the fight, my character, who really doesn't do a whole lot themselves, right? Their Eldamon are what really do the battling for them. They have to waste 2 actions just to bring in their Eldamon. Isn't that like the worst action taxed ever? All right, well, let's keep reading. While phased in, an Eldamon uses your initiative and gains actions and reactions at the start of each of your turns rather than you, aka it literally becomes you. Your Eldamon must remain within 160 feet of you, so since you can't act a move, that does restrict its movement, aka they don't let you phase this invincible thing out and let it go run through the dungeon hell-no. It puts some restrictions on it so that basically it can fight within pretty much almost any battle that you could conceivably think of in a Pathfinder 2 sense. It feels unpleasant for a phased-in Eldamon to stay outside of line of effect from you, as a steady line of effect is calming. As such, they refuse to do so unless it is necessary during an encounter or similar life and death situation as determined by the GM. This is all a lot of text to prevent people from basically summoning in their unbeatable, invincible, immortal Eldamon and having it go scout and just die, right? And be like, oh, it doesn't matter. This is all text designed to prevent that kind of bad behavior. Now, is this text technically needed? Maybe no, but we live in a time and a place where apparently people do need this. All right. Your Eldamon can use Phase Eldamon to switch back with you as a free action rather than 2-action activity. And with your permission, they can also use Phase Eldamon to swap briefly back to you and then over to another Eldamon, which is a 2-action activity as well. All right. Now, this lasts until your Eldamon uses Phase Eldamon or until your Eldamon is reduced to 0 hit points, whichever comes first. When your Eldamon returns the phase back to you, even if it does so only briefly, you lose hit points equal to the Eldamon's missing hit points, and you take all the negative effects the Eldamon was suffering. Additionally, when it phases back out, your Eldamon refreshes. If losing the Eldamon's missing hit points reduces you to 0 hit points, you become dying. All right. Special. During an encounter, this is the most gamest language of all time, you can phase Eldamon as a free action triggered at the start of your turn as long as you have started the encounter without an Eldamon phased in and haven't used Phase Eldamon yet in the encounter. If you do, you can use the Elemental Effusion ability first. So what this basically means is, like the new Barbarian, when an encounter starts, you can, at the start of this 2-action activity, right, you can do as not a 1-action activity that you can do as a free action. It's a 2-action activity that lets you, you can do it for free. So basically, at the start of the fight, you can bring in an Eldamon. And that way you can have an Eldamon ready to go and battle for you. All right. And, all this, restriction about, how much you can move and they have to stay within certain timing of you. Well, guess what? Once a minute, okay, as a free action, they can use Tug Conduit. Your Eldamon tugs on the conduit, and even though your character normally can't axe, you partially phase in and you stride once directly towards your Eldamon. So it's basically like they can kind of reel you along a little bit once a minute, just in case you need a slight repositioning, right? So, but yeah, the most important thing here is you don't get punished for your being a cool class, right? The game is set up in a way that it lets you, summon your Eldamon and start kicking ass, and that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty awesome. And obviously Paizo learned this lesson. They certainly did it with the Barbarian. I would have liked to have seen them do it with some other classes that they didn't do it with the remaster. You could kind of think of the swashbuckler, right? They kind of was an action tax and that they had to gain panache. And if they didn't gain panache, then they kind of couldn't use their abilities. But now they gain panache even on a failure. So you could see that they were trying to improve that sort of thing. But yeah, so they make it easy. And Don Pokey says, good riddance to action taxes. And despite a lack of action tax, there's still a strategic decision which Eldamon you choose. Amazing. Absolutely. But it's not a horrible decision, right? At the beginning of the day, it's what 3 Eldamon do I want to prepare for my stable of maybe a dozen or more that I've accumulated throughout the campaign. Then at the start of the fight, which one do I want to bring in? And by the way, remember, it does take some actions and it takes some planning, but you could swap your Eldamon in the middle of the fight, right? Remember, your character phased out still is sort of invisible, intangible on the battlefield. You could maybe make a token there or a marker there, or lower the opacity of your token on Foundry. But if your Eldamon basically makes it back to you, it can phase out and swap back in, and you could swap in a new Eldamon. So this means that even during a fight, there may be a reason for you to swap out your Eldamon and bring in another Eldamon. Maybe you need the healing power. Maybe you need the damaging power of a different Eldamon. So it's very, very powerful, very tactical, very strategic. And it doesn't punish you. Because the thing about action taxes is it's not strategic because you're going to have to do this. So it's just a tax, right? So it's never strategic. It's a strategic decision. Am I going to rage? Am I going to hunt prey? Of course you are. Your class doesn't function without it. So, all right. So that's the Eldamon Trainer. All right. again, there's a couple other actions that that you could do. There's the you can do it action, and basically, even though you're phased out, remember you share action pools, so this is basically one action, but you can make a diplomacy check against your own Eldamon, and basically you can aid them. Okay, so basically what this means is, it says you can use this action even though you can't act while you're phased out. And basically, a character can sort of aid themselves, right? Because you're sharing one pool of actions, but, your character, even though they're phased out, could be like, Squirrel Ash, you could do it, and basically aid them, even though it's not really aid, but it is kind of aid. Same thing, like you can, again, you're all sharing the same pool of actions, but you can basically use your recall knowledge. Because, right, your Eldamon's probably not going to have the same knowledges that you have, but if you need to recall knowledge, even though you're phased out and you can't act, you can still be like, I know this. And apparently you can manage to borrow a bit of your phase and snap your mind and focus. So you can shout information to your Eldamon and other allies, right? Which is, again, they're very gamey things. They're trying to make them make sense in the simulation, and that's fine. But, for the most part, it's pretty cool. And by the way, this depends on what your calling is. So the Eldamon Researcher gets this I know this ability. The Eldamon Whisperer gets this you can do it ability. And the Eldamon Battler gets the Elemental Shield ability. All right. All right. Now, this is, again, a good example of where this game understands that it's complicated, and it may not appear to be so, but it is. And, there's a great sidebar right here. Too much Eldamon. There are a huge number of Eldamon elements and elemental powers. Fortunately, the rules have you covered in case you want to keep it simple. For a simpler experience, don't give access to other Eldamon. Limit the starting Eldamon to 13 options and stick with the default powers gained when leveling up. To simplify even further and avoid needing to read 13 elements worth of powers to decide which common element to use one of the 3 sets. Sets that include Ankarub, a life Eldamon, tend to be more flexible as they allow a very different playstyle. So basically it's like, hey, do you want the Ash Ketchum, right? You're going to go with the Squirrel Lash, the Boto, and the Lotus Neck. But there's like an energetic option, an esoteric option, a simple option, and a balanced option. So these are, they're basically saying, look, if your person doesn't know how to make this decision, here's a good advice for you. Okay. And again, we get all these different, feats and abilities, just like we would from anybody else here. Okay. And here you can see our feats come in. And I'm not even going to get into this because we just have all of these, these are all the level 1 feats, and then we get feats at level 2, hang in there, Eldamon, right? Great little reaction. If your Eldamon would take damage that would reduce it to 0 hit points, you have to be phased out, and your trained Eldamon is phased in, and you have more hit points than the maximum hit points. And basically you can, take the damage for them and keep them fighting. Right. And of course, you're actually just transferring the damage to you, but it's great flavor, and it's, obviously very much tied in with the, hang in there, Pikachu. So they get a whole big dong list of Eldamon trainer feats. So just like any other class in Pathfinder 2, they're going to get 11 class feats over the course of their 20 levels. And they can, improve the Eldamon's ability, improve some of their skills, improve some of their other stuff. So it's completely and fully a complete class. All right. So the second class, which I'm not going to spend too much time about because we did do this on our Eldamon stream, is the Elemental Avatar. And basically the Elemental Avatar is uses these elemental powers of the Eldamon themselves directly. Okay. And they get a couple different power sets and couple different power abilities. But again, think Bender. Right. And think, that they gain this sort of, abilities or different powers. And most importantly, they're basically going to be mostly linked to one elemental power. Now, at level 13, you get this elemental duality power or class ability. You etch multiple paths of elemental power into your life, force, mind, body, and soul, allowing you to choose between 2 sets of powers. Whenever you prepare your elemental powers, prepare 2 sets of powers instead of 1, though only 1 is available to you at one time. At the beginning of the first turn in an encounter, and whenever you refresh, choose which of the 2 sets of powers are available to you. You can only use the powers from the set you choose. So basically, you can have like, I want fire mode and then life mode, and you can't use both at the same time. but it does give you a little bit more access to having more powers. Whereas the Eldamon Trainer, right from the beginning can have this, whereas Elemental Duality, has to wait to level 13. Again, it's a cool class, and it works a lot like the Kineticist or the Bender, but obviously the way the powers work, it completely sets them apart. All right. So here are the elemental powers. All right. So the most important thing that we have to remember here is that these powers are basically, you have to use them once. It's 2 sets of powers from the same element. Is that really what it is? I thought it was 2 different elements. Let's see if you're right. Oh, you're right. It's still just 1 element. All right, so that's even easier. No, Sims. It looks like you're right. So it's even easier. You basically just get 2 sets of powers. So that way you can kind of really specialize. So the elemental avatar is really simple in that, you basically, can really focus in on just 1 element. All right. So even easier than I thought. All right. So, again, the core thing about these powers is that they're basically, you can use them once, and then you can't use them again until your character refreshes. All right. And when you refresh, you rearrange the elemental energies all around you, refreshing your powers. You refresh all your active and reactive powers, allowing you to use them again. All right. The other thing that these characters get is this elemental surge ability. All right. When there's not enough elemental energy in the surrounding area for full power, or when an Eldamon or elemental avatar's routine is disrupted, they can use an elemental surge in place of a power to charge up a power on their next turn. Elemental surges are much weaker than powers and thus aren't substitutes, but sometimes they're just what it takes to turn the situation around. When you think elemental surge, think cantrip, right? And obviously the powers are a little bit, I think they're pretty powerful. I don't think they're quite as powerful as spells, but think elemental surge, think cantrip. And as a result, it's 1 action, which is really nice. All right. And you can't have already used a power this turn, and you create a minor surge of your element in place of using a power. Then you cannot use the power on this turn. But on your next turn, the first time you use an active power, you gain the elemental surge effect based on your element, just before or after applying the power's normal effects. All right. So you'll see that each of these elements does this a little bit differently. All right. Which is really cool. So we've shown this table and chart before, but this is how you know that this was made by a nerd. So this is all of the elemental types, what they're strong against, what they're weak against. Okay. And then these sort of charts kind of show you how each element maps. It shows you how complex it is from a gameplay perspective. And then it shows you on a rating from 1 to 5 of what kind of powers and what kind of abilities does this bring to the table. So one player, for example, might want to just, say, I'm going to load up on offense. I'm going to take death. I'm going to take earth. I'm going to take electricity, right? Another player could be thinking, okay, I want a variety of options. All right. I want something that's really hyper specialized. Death is great for debuffing and offense. I want to make sure I have something that's really strong for control. Okay. Which is the strongest controlling energy? Okay. Ice is pretty controlling. Wood is pretty controlling. So maybe I'll pick up, wood and death. And then, what if I want something with high defense? So maybe I'll pick up earth, right? Or maybe I'll pick up life. And so that might be the way that one person, can sort of, figure out. So this is a great way. I mean, obviously you can read all the powers and you can make a decision for yourself, but if you don't feel like reading, all of these different powers, this is a great way. It's like a strategy. Yeah, Knox. It's like a Nintendo strategy guide. Absolutely. It's totally like that. And I think that is awesome. All right. So let us let's dig in to one of these power sets, because I think that's really going to sort of help us decide where we want to go here. So which power should we look at? All right, we'll pick a low complexity one like air. we'll pick a high complexity one or medium complexity one like electricity. You know what? We'll do life. That's a high complexity one. And then one more. Which one do I want to pick? I'm going to pick, let's pick ice. All right. So which power, now we might, it's only 8 o'clock, so we might have time to look at a couple of different of these powers. But I think you'll get a really good, remember, and that's the cool thing about it. We've been talking about these classes, just like you've been talking about Pathfinder 2, and they have these kind of different builds and different feats and options. But each of these power sets plays out not radically different. I'm not going to try to say that like an earth elemental avatar is completely different than a fire elemental avatar, but they kind of are. The way that the powers play out, the type of abilities that you have access to, the way that each power set works and works against itself, all combined so that it's a very different play experience. And I think this just gives you incredible versatility and flexibility. And I think that that's really something that's impressive. It's impressive. And they put a lot of work into this. Elia says, glad to catch stream live, but I got to go. Glad you were doing better lately. I'll be curious about your thoughts on the PF2 Mythic system. Yeah, I have not really looked into it yet. I have the PDF, but I am interested to get that. If I can get Smith on, I know he's been looking at it, or at least he glanced through it. I'd love to get his thoughts on it too, because he and I were both big fans of Pathfinder 1's Mythic Adventures. I know a lot of people weren't. We thought it was great. We thought it was just what the game needed for that type of thing. If I want something that's super balanced and super normal, then why am I playing Mythic, right? But thank you so much for the super chat, and I am doing better. Actually, ironically, yesterday was kind of a bad day for me. It was one of the first bad days I've had in a little while. But on the whole, I'm feeling a lot better. I go see my psychiatrist for the first time tomorrow. I've been seeing my therapist. That's like an online thing, but I'm actually going to see a psychiatrist tomorrow just to make sure my meds are where they're supposed to be. So a little not nervous, but I'm interested to hear what they have to say. So I am feeling better for the most part. I really am. So, all right. We'll wait another minute here to get some votes. How are we doing? How's nice. But thank you. Oh yeah, we have to. I know you probably stepped off, but we'll have to get you on the stream sometime. Maybe in the next year. It was nice having you on. We had you on earlier this year for your Forbidden Lands follow up. But I like to bring in some of our veteran patrons. Get to have a guest host every once in a while. It's real fun having Donnie on. We're gonna have Donnie on again to talk about Earth Dawn. All right. Looks like we've got a clear winner. That's not quite a clear winner, but with 39% of the vote going to life, we are going to take a look at life. All right. So this is exciting because I don't know what this does. So this is not one that I read. So this will be kind of interesting. All right. So what we can see from life is it's a high complexity thing. It's very low offense, as we would expect. Moderate low debuffing, which sounds right. A little bit of control, and then a lot of defense. So that seems to make completely sense. So let's go down to life. Now remember, if you are an elemental avatar class, you're going to be using these powers directly. If you are an Eldamon trainer, you are instead going to be summoning one of several different life Eldamon who is going to come out and basically do the life powers themselves. Does that make sense? All right. For starters, I believe that this is Lotus Snack. Can we talk about how awesome it is that the one of the low level common Eldamon is for life is literally a caduceus, right? Which, for those of you who don't know, the caduceus is the snakes that are wrapped around Mercury's scepter, and it is the staff of the healer. It is the symbol used for doctors. So the fact that it is a entwined snake, a caduceus, is just this is the kind of subtle, smart flavor that I just love. I think this is awesome. and amazing. So anyways, good to them. So, and again, they don't come out and beat you over the head with it, right? It's one of those, you either get it or you don't. And I love stuff like that. All right. It's just a real nice touch. And just because I don't want to seem like, I don't want to be like I don't want to be a bozo. Let me fire. The hell's the life? Jeez, there's so many Eldamon. All right, here we go. Yeah, okay. So this is Feedy. Okay. So this is the life snake Eldamon. And this is basically what it looks like when it's your little pet, right? Like, this is its cute form that it follows you around on. And, it's only 2 feet long. It only weighs 1 pound, right? It's really cute. When you summon it for battle, all right, like when you phase it out for battle, it comes in as Caduceon, right? Again, chef's kiss, right? And as a result, it comes in, it's 7 feet long and 21 pounds, right? So it comes out as in its battle form, right? And then you can, as you get higher level, eventually get basically just like Pokemon, you can evolve it, and then it turns into a Colubrio, which is this, in my personal opinion, all the battle forms are pretty cool. All the evolved form, the art, it goes from being pretty cute, right? And kind of chibi. And I think all the evolved forms are just awesome. They're just badasses, right? Yeah. Caduceon Digi-evolves into Colubrion, right? So any case, you can see here, that now it's this 14-foot long, 145 pound monster. So each of these is its own monster, right? So, this is Feedy. This is it's Feedy, Caduceon, and Colubrio. So this is all that when your Eldamon pops in, this is specific to this life Eldamon. This life Eldamon has, double senses, crystallized life, and the following power progression, right? So these are all as you gain levels, as your Feedy gains levels and your Caduceon gains levels, this creature gains more and more of these powers. It also has these resistances and these weaknesses. Now, that might be different from playing as Ankrub, who is the life Scarab Eldamon. And you can see that this creature has the Scarab of Protection ability and the Flutter Jump and all the Luck Charms ability, right? So, and they have their own power progression. So even though these are both life Pokemon or Eldamon, they're different. So when you pick it's not enough to just say, I want to be able to use the life powers. It's also, which life Pokemon, Eldamon do I want to use? It's tough not to say that. All right, so here we go. All right. The element of life embodies birth, healing, rebirth, and the vital essences that permeate all living creatures, giving them instincts, intuition, and collective faith. Life users focus on preservation and rejuvenation, mainly via temporary hit points, keeping themselves and their allies healthy and refreshed no matter what. Vital resurgence. Your temporary hit points are full or of resurgent life energy. If a creature has 0 hit points and gains temporary HP from your life power, they instead regain 1 hit point. Once per hour, instead of granting temporary HP with your life power, you can choose to heal a creature for an equal amount of hit points. They then become immune to this substitution for 1 hour. So basically, they deal in temporary hit points, but they understand that. Look, sometimes if somebody drops to 0, your temporary hit points don't technically get them back up. So okay, solution: if they're at 0, your temporary hit points instead heal them for 1, right? And if you really need to heal somebody once an hour, basically once a fight, or more, a little bit less, but you can actually just heal them. But again, it's not just healing. It's not just like, it's just like a cleric and they just spam charge out heals, right? No, they do something a little different. They give temporary hit points with a little bit of a distinction there so that they can do a little bit more with it. Okay. Now, before we start tying into the active powers, okay, which are tied to level, I'm actually going to jump all the way down to the bottom of the bottom of the power ability so we can look at its refresh and its reaction. But before we get there, not every power, but most power sets have a key term, or almost like each power set almost has its own unique mechanic. Like Darkness has this new mechanic called Shroud. Well, Recovery is a life term, okay, that we'll see in several of these life elemental powers. So a recovery effect is a healing effect that recovers from a particular damage source. Recover effects often happen simultaneously to a damage source, effectively reducing the damage. A recovery effect can never heal more damage than the actual amount of hit points the creature loses from the linked damage source, even if several happen at once. When the healing is simultaneous to the damage, it can even prevent the creature from being reduced to 0 hit points and becoming unconscious. Though, if the remaining damage is still enough to knock them unconsciousness, the healing does not wake them up. Recovery effects that happen at different timing can wake a creature as normal. Okay, so that's something we have to keep in mind. My YouTube thing died on me. Hold on a sec. Okay. Sims says God tier preventative healing. Yeah. So for my fellow WoW fans, I don't play WoW and I haven't played in years, but when I did play WoW, I played a priest and I played a discipline priest. Okay. And discipline priests used power word shield. And what power word shield was in D&D terms, in Pathfinder terms, was temporary hit points. And I love that form of healing. And I'll tell you why. And I know it seems silly, but it feels much more active, proactive than reactive. And I like that a lot more. It makes you feel smart. It makes you feel like you're more engaged rather than just running around, topping people off who got damaged. I don't know why it feels different, but it does. And I can't, tell you. All right. So let's take a look here at the bottom. All right. So remember, one of the cool things about this game is that all power sets start with a reactive power. Now, you can pick up additional reactions as you go up. In fact, I think most of the power sets have 3. There might be some that have 4, but I think they all have 3. And this gives you multiple reactions. So, the only thing cooler than having a reaction is having to actually make a choice. Which reaction do I want to use? But remember, too, that reactions are just like powers. Okay? In that you can use them once, and then, that card is tapped, right? That power is tapped. That power is put in the discard pile. You don't get it back until you refresh. All right. So it's not just a question of like, oh, I'll just use my reaction every time. Of course you would, right? But now you actually have to kind of make a choice. And having multiple reactive powers eventually gives you multiple reactions before you would need to refresh. All right. So let's start off with Vital Sacrifice. So this has the Concentrate, Healing, Magical. There's that Recovery trait, which we just read about, and the Vitality traits. It's a reaction, and a foe damages an ally, and the ally is within 30 feet of you. You connect your life force to your ally, protecting them from harm, though not without a cost to yourself. You heal your ally simultaneously as they receive the damage, for an amount equal to 1 plus your level, or the total damage, whichever is lower. This effectively reduces the total damage by that amount. If there is any damage remaining, you lose an amount of hit points equal to 1 plus your level, or the remaining damage, whichever is lower. And you further reduce the damage to your ally by that amount. If any damage still remains, it applies to your ally as normal. So what does this mean? It means at level 1, we can, if we think about a level 1 champion, right, they have their reactive champion's reaction, which they can use within 15 feet, by the way. You prevent 2 plus 1 points of damage, right? Because you're level 1, so it's 2 plus level, so 3 points of damage. This prevents 2 points of damage, all right, 1 plus level. And then if there's any damage remaining, we lose an additional 1 plus level points of damage, 2. And we prevent that from going to our target, but we take the damage. So what this means is we prevent 4 points of damage, 2 of it completely by sort of healing it as they take it, and 2 of it we take. All right. Now you can imagine that like at level 9, we could prevent 10 plus 10. So we can prevent 20 points of damage, but half of it goes to us. But remember, the champion is only preventing 11. Now, they're just flat out preventing it. But this character is preventing, now granted, it's whichever is lower, so if there's less damage, then you don't have to take the full amount. But I mean, at level 9, being able to present 20 damage, now sure, 10 of it's being healed at the source and 10 of it's going into your character, right? But think about the cool strategic options of that. It's a great way to like, you know, sort of amateurize your character's hit points around the party. And 20 is like, that's like damn near, I mean, at level 9, that's like a lot of damage being absorbed, right? That's a huge amount. Now, unlike a champion can use their power every round, right? A champion can use their champion's reaction every round, which is really cool. But remember, once you use Vital Sacrifice, that reaction is tapped. That reaction power is flipped face down. You don't get to use it again until you use a recovery power. So if you wanted to, you could use your reaction power and then use a refresh power and then use your reaction power and use your refresh power. And you could just keep it up all the time. And maybe for this fight, that's what you need to do. Maybe. But usually the refresh powers aren't as good as some of your actual, you know, real active powers. So there's this fun strategic balance game of when do I use this and how do I use this? And by the way, my Vital Sacrifice can prevent up to 20 points of damage at level 9. If somebody's getting hit and we don't think it's going to do that much damage, maybe I don't want to use my refresh power because I want to kind of save it for what's going to be a bigger hit. So these could be really powerful, and you may want to just sit there and chain refresh powers just to keep this up, but maybe not, you know? So there's this fun game that comes in when suddenly not, you know, dual strike, I can't even remember what it's called, double strike, you know, the fighter power. I always get it confused with double slash, I always get it confused with the ranger power. But, you know, those powers are good, and you're just going to use them like every round. You know, the champion's reaction is good, and you're just going to use it every round. Of course you are. Like if somebody's within 15 feet of you, you're going to use your champion's reaction, right? Yes, I'm sorry. Double slice. Thank you, Gabriel. Double slice, not to be confused with twin takedown, which, by the way, like double slice, A+ name. Am I the only person that gets twin takedown confused with hunted shot? And it's weird to me, right? Because hunted shot is, it's 2 shots. So like, twin takedown to me sounds like what hunted shot should be, right? So hunted shot should be named twin takedown. And then whatever attacking with 2 swords is for a ranger should just be called something else. I don't even know what it should be called. But like Bob had, you know, and Bob has played like 8 rangers in my campaigns. And I got to be honest, and I've played a fighter who was a double slicing fighter. And I got to be honest with you, that shit still confuses me. So, you know, maybe I'm alone here, but anyways, we got Sims talking about, because I think Sims has a life Eldamon. This is one way of giving infinite healing without giving infinite healing. Exactly. This is another great way of thinking about that, right? This person can just heal forever, basically, but you don't have to worry about it because it's temp. Yeah, forget healing you after you go down. I heal you before you can go down. Howdy, Mikey. Good to see you. Knox says, this goes back to the illusion of choice thing you were talking about, that this supplement gets around since you have multiple Eldamon. Yeah. Exactly, Knox. You know, you may not have this power available to you depending on which Eldamon you chose, you know? And maybe this fight didn't need this healing. Maybe this fight needed some deeps, right? So you brought in your fire Eldamon. Maybe you brought in your electricity Eldamon. So, I mean, that's a huge tactical decision, right? Don Poke says, can certainly see how this gets a little more tactical and choicey. You're considering it both on whether you need to switch, can take the damage, if using this gives a different opportunity. Exactly. So there's a lot of moving parts here. All right. So the other thing that we get for sure at level 1 is our refresh power. And this is Life Cocoon. And this is 2 actions. All right. And remember, the refresh power resets all of our powers. If we only have 1 of our powers tapped, it resets that 1. If we have 5 of our powers tapped, it resets them all, right? So it's an untapped step for your entire power set, right? Or if all of your powers are in your discard pile, you get to return them all to your hand, All right. It's like taking a rest in Gloomhaven, except you don't have to shuffle one up and randomly discard it. All right. Now, typically, this is going to be more of like a, it's more of like a, let's sit back, like this is more of a recovery, but it's still very powerful and still very tactical. As you recalibrate the strands of vital essence all around you, you draw them all in towards yourself, weaving a cocoon of life energy and surrounding yourself. You become immobilized by your own cocoon, but you gain temporary HP equal to 3 plus 3 times your level, both lasting until the end of your next turn. You refresh your powers. If you lose all the temporary hit points, you are no longer immobilized. And if the immobilized condition ends or you move or are moved, the temporary hit points end as well, right? The temporary hit points are literally this cocoon. You can choose to end both the immobilized condition and temporary hit points as a free action, which has the concentrate trait. So, I don't need to tell you, okay, if your character's level 10 and you use Life Cocoon, your character is going to gain a 40 temporary hit point buffer. 40 temporary hit points is a lot of temporary hit points, okay? That's a lot of temporary hit points. This is the refresh power that you use to get back your other life powers. Just think about the strategic options for this, right? Like your character puts yourself in a position where they're basically going to tank the enemy next round and they're going to be life cocooned up, right? Imagine if you have a champion supporting your life Eldamon as it goes into its life cocoon, right? Like it's just awesome. But then also think about the counterplay, right? If you can figure out if the enemy can somehow move you, right? Or if they can, push you or something like that, then they can pop that temp HP bubble and, get at the soft meat in between, and again, and of course it lasts until the end of your next turn. And this is your level 1 refresh power, so it's really, really interesting. And it's really, really, cool because this isn't just a no brainer. I'm going to do this. No, this power has tactical considerations. Your character becomes immobilized. That's definitely a thing, right? Your character gains his temporary life points that could potentially go away if the immobilized condition is depleted or pushed away. But also, it refreshes all your powers. But also, it's 2 actions. So you could just see like it's not immediately apparent when you would use this. It's going to matter. It's going to be different each and every fight. Now, if the fight's going on long enough, you're probably going to want to use your life cocoon at some point because you're going to want to get your powers back. But maybe you don't. But maybe you really want to use the life cocoon and you use it right away. So there's just a ton of different options. All right. Now, those are just the level 1 powers because as you level up, you can also get a level 5 reactive power. You can get a level 11 reactive power. You can even get, higher level refresh powers. You can get a preserve life and you can get a life vortex. These will all give you your powers back as well. All right. Additionally, okay, you get all these other abilities because you're a life energy. Okay. I mean, we could get into all of this, but, for example, you can sense the life force of living creatures nearby and its counterforce with an undead. You gain life sense as a imprecise sense out to 30 feet, right? And obviously, it depends on what feats you take and, whether you gain these or not and all this other stuff. But it's just like, this is just the life power. Each different element is different, So, and again, it's customizable, right? Because you have to take feats and you have to take this, it's just crazy that you have this much customization. And this is where, again, the different Eldamon themselves and the different feats that you take as your trainer, as your avatar, really come into matter. You're going to be able to, decide which of these you want. Do you want this? Do you want more sensing ability or do you want a shield? Do you want, all this other stuff? Anyways, let's take a look at the level 7 refresh power. So remember, this is what we start the game with, Life Cocoon. That brings us back And Vital Sacrifice lets us basically sort of heal and take the damage for our allies. And then Life Cocoon puts us in a big temporary hit point bubble, right, to refresh all of our powers. Actually, before we go to that, let's go all the way back up to level 1, and let's see what powers we could start off with. All right. So our first active power, do I choose between reactive and refresh powers when I reach those levels? Gabriel, I don't know. I think you do. Yeah, I don't think you just get every active. By the way, that also plays into the strategy of this, because Gabriel, if I take a level 1, if I take healing motes, so I've got 1 power, active power, and then remember I can only use that once, right? And then at 3rd level, let's say I pick up Vital Touch, so now I've got 2 active powers, and then I get I've got Overflowing Spill or Soothing Recovery at my 5th level power. And then at 7th level, I take Life Rebound. And at 9th level, I take Forced Link. And then at 11th level, I take Vital Collapse. You see what I'm getting at? I now have 7 active powers. I mean, realistically, am I ever going to get through 7 powers before I refresh, or maybe even before the battle ends? Probably not, you know? So there's sort of a strategy of wanting to have just enough active powers to do all the stuff that you want to do, to have enough refresh powers so that you have something tactical that you could do to get your powers back, and enough reactive powers so that you're using them. But if you're refreshing and you've got let's say you take all 3 reactions, and every time you refresh, you've only used 1 of the 3 of them, then you're kind of leaving something on the table. You know what I mean? You haven't gotten like the most bang for your buck, right? The best case scenario is to have a perfect mix of active powers, reactive powers, and refresh powers that no matter what choice you make, it's part of the plan, and it's helping out the group. And that ideally, when you use your refresh power, you're getting like a lot of powers back. You're getting a lot of active powers back. You're getting a lot of reactive powers back, right? All right. So yeah. Oh, incredible min-maxing. I said at the beginning of the stream, I think there's a lot of ivory tower design here. And by the way, remember, this is a complex power set. So this to me basically says you could play this very shittily and badly, or if you know what you're doing, you can make something that is insane, right? Okay, so you always have to have at least 1 refresh power and reactive power. Okay, yeah, which totally makes sense that you at least need to have 1 refresh power. By the way, I cannot stress this enough. Every power set has reactive powers. Every power set starts with a level 1 reaction. So every Eldamon, every elemental avatar will start with a life power. So we have 2 choices at level 1. We have healing motes, which is 2 actions. We send out glowing motes of healing energy, which latch onto your choice of either all living and undead creatures within 30-foot emanation of us, or a single living or undead creature within 30 feet of us. If you target only a single creature, 2 motes latch onto that creature. When a living creature with 1 or more motes takes damage, they receive a simultaneous healing equal to 2 plus twice your level, up to the maximum of the damage taken as a recovery effect. Remember, these are like, they heal you as you're sort of taking the damage. All right. 1 mote on that creature then vanishes. When an undead with 1 or more motes takes damage, they also take an amount of vitality damage equal to 2 plus your level from that mote, and then 1 mote creature vanishes. What does this mean? It means you're literally putting stacks. Like, they're not dots, right? They're not dot stacks. They're like temporary HP stacks, right? And you can either put a mote onto everybody, right? You could put 1 stack of this healing motes onto everybody, or you could put 2 stacks onto 1 target, right? And then that basically gives that creature 2 instances where when the damage comes in, they get either bonus damage or they get a little bit of a healing. So let's be clear with this. We could put these motes onto all of our allies, obviously, and other living creatures. So we have to be a little bit strategic with our location here. But we've basically, when we do this, we've given every creature in our party, in this case, it's simultaneous healing equal to 2 plus twice your level. So at level 1, it's a 4 damage point shield to essentially all of your party members. Now, potentially also the enemies if you're in a bad position. All right. Now, motes otherwise last until your next turn. Undead receive a reflex save in order to avoid it in general. So this, again, is very tactical play. Do you want to give everybody in the party a potential damage absorption shield? Do you want to give one person 2 absorption shields? How are you going to position yourself to not hit enemies? Or are you fighting against undead and they can go ahead and get fucked? Very cool, very powerful, and very tactical. Or you could choose Life Buffer, which is also 2 actions. You send a powerful surge of vital essence into a creature within 30 feet, creating a life buffer that protects a living creature or damages an undead. If the target is a living creature, they gain 1d10 temporary hit points plus an additional d10 temporary hit points for each level you have. These temporary hit points last until you refresh. So now, I mean, that's 2d10 temp at level 1, okay? At level 10, that's 11 d10 temporary hit points. All right, that's, what is that, 1155? It's like almost 60 temporary hit points, I think, at level 10. Right now, our Southern Beaches characters are level 13. So that's a 77 temporary hit point buffer that you give. 77 temp. Let me say that again. 77 temp. Okay? Now, if you refresh, that resets. Now, obviously, this life buffer is a power, which means you can use it once and it doesn't come back until you refresh. So now if I life buffer somebody and they get a 77 hit point, maybe I roll really well, they've got like an 80 temporary hit point buffer. I may not want to refresh because I'm like, damn, there's still a lot of energy left in that shield. Maybe I need to do something else. Or maybe that life buffer gets chewed up, or maybe I rolled really shit. And I'm like, I'll refresh early. It doesn't matter. We're not leaving that much on the table. Choices, choices, choices. And thankfully, you get all of your level 1 powers of your element unless you trade it for a universal power. So we are going to start off with Healing Motes, Life Buffer, the Reaction, and the Refresh, right? We get Vital Sacrifice, Life Cocoon, and Healing Motes and Life Buffer. Now, let me tell you something. And again, I don't mean to shit talk clerics, okay? I played a cleric from 1 to 20. Okay. And let me tell you something. Healing, we're not even into the higher level powers yet. We're not even into the higher level powers. Okay. Let me tell you something. These are already better than casting heal. If for no other reason than it feels cooler, it feels more tactical, it feels more active, you're being proactive. Okay. It already, I mean, I was so sick of casting heal, right? It was disgusting, Tom Pokey points out, just to throw this out there, this is 2 actions. And if it were in a rule book, I bet it'd be simpler and cost 3 actions. Right. Oh, I want to put this kind of AoE quasi healing thing on all my party members. That's a 3 action activity. Nope. It's not a 3 action activity. And unlike Kineticist, this doesn't, do the overcharge thing where it's like, and my kinetic aura drops out. Nope. I just can only use this once per refresh, right? So, and just, this is fun, like this is tactical, this is dramatic, and we're level 1. We haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet, right? When we take feats, we're going to be getting new additional powers, and now we get all our level 1 powers. Now we go to level 3, and we get to pick between Life Bond and Vital Touch. And by the way, remember, there are also, universal powers that are available at all of these levels. Okay. So come down here. So for example, at level 1 and 3, and 5 and 7, really there's a third choice that we could, take. Right. So and these are available to everybody. Right. So in all cases, we can, you can really think of it as you're making a choice between 3 things. All right. Force. Mind, water, weird. All right. So let's take a look at what we get at level 3. Life Bond, 2 actions. You temporarily connect the life force of one willing target to those of several other willing creatures in order to protect them from harm. Choose one willing target within 30 feet, later referred to as the primary target, and up to 3 other willing creatures within 30 feet, later referred to as protectors. You can be the primary target or a protector. The protectors must be of the primary target's level or higher, and they can't be minions, although the primary target can be a minion. No cheesing. The primary target gains temporary hit points equal to your level until you refresh. Until you refresh, the protectors lose hit points equal to the damage dealt to the primary target after applying any weaknesses and resistances, divided by the number of protectors plus 1, while the primary target reduces the damage by the total number of hit points the protectors lost. All right, so what is this? Well, if you played 3rd edition D&D, you know what Shield Other is. This is a group Shield Other. All right, so for example, if you include 3 protectors and the primary target takes a total of 26 damage, each protector loses 6 hit points and the primary target only takes 8. If a protector becomes unconscious or dying, they automatically cease becoming a protector. Now, again, right, this is a situation where you're basically allowing the damage to sort of get split up amongst 1, 2, 3 people. Who can they afford to take it? Suddenly makes look like can you? But that sounds great, right? Except what if an AOE goes off? And what if all those people, the protectors, are taking damage from the AOE and they're taking damage from this? Could get out of hand. So you got to be very careful with this. But at the same time, a person taking 26 damage and then only ending up taking 8 is crazy, right? That's very powerful, right? And, you know, does it say how long this lasts? I'm assuming it lasts until you refresh. So, you know, this could be a much longer term bond, but like Shield Other, if you know Shield Other from Pathfinder 1 or from 3rd edition, it's very cool. Now, and why? Because this requires some thinking, you know? Maybe the wizard goes, hey guys, I'm all the way in the back and I've got all these hit points and I don't need them. You guys are doing a great job in the front line. Put me in the life bond. Okay, sure. We'll tap into some of those wizard HPs, you know? Let's share the load, right? But we also might want Vital Touch. If we want something a little bit more direct, healing the living and harming the undead. Touch a living creature within your reach or make a melee power attack roll against an undead creature. Instead of healing, they gain 6 temporary hit points plus 6 temporary hit points for every level you have, along with a +2 status bonus for AC for 1 round. Status bonuses to AC are the hardest thing to get in Pathfinder 2. The temporary hit points last until you refresh. An undead takes that much vitality damage with effects depending on your attack roll, right? You can do critical hit or double. By the way, note, if you hit an undead with this, they take the full damage, right? D10 plus D10 per level, and it's a -2 status penalty to its AC for 1 round. So they're basically like, you know, Frightened 2 or Clumsy 2. So again, you know, it's 6 temp per level. You know, if you're level plus 6, so at level 10, it's 66 temporary hit points plus 2 status bonus 8 to AC. That's a huge defensive buff. 66 temporary hit points. Plus, I don't need to tell you this. All right. When you're, I mean, obviously most of the things can be done by players, but like as a player or as a game master, like when you're attacking somebody's hit points and the hit points are going down and then somebody heals them, like at least you feel like I was hitting them, I was damaging their hit points, and then the healing just brought them back up. But the healing came from some sort of technically maybe limited pool. But when you're just eating into their temporary hit points, and by the way, the problem with most temporary hit points in Pathfinder 2 is that they're just so damn small that they never eat up an entire attack or 2 attacks or 3 attacks. It's like, you know, you're at a part in the game where you're taking 15 damage or 16 or 17 damage on a hit, and there's a power that gives you 6 temp, you know, 7 temp. And it's like, okay, you take 22 damage. All right, well, -6. Okay, I still took 14. At level 10, for example, this is 66 temporary hit points. Now, of course, remember, this is only touch range, right? whereas this life bond is up to 30 feet and up to 30 feet away from them. So a little bit more precise, but maybe harder to pull off, right? Because you have to move, or they have to move to you. All right, and we're just into level 3. All right, level 5, overflowing spill. This has got that recovery trait, remember, which lets us heal them as they take the damage. You loosen the life energy in a living flow, causing their energy to spill out and recover their victim's wounds. Choose a foe within 30 feet, and then they make a will save. On a critical success, they're unaffected. The foes, on a failure, it's the same as success, except it lasts until we refresh. On a success, so even if they make the will save, the foe's life force briefly spills out when they harm others. For 1 round, and remember, if they fail, it lasts until we refresh. For 1 round, whenever they deal damage to another living creature within 15 feet of them, the foe loses hit points equal to 2 plus half your level, and the target heals that many hit points, or the total damage they would take, whatever is left. If they damage several creatures at once, they still only lose hit points equal to 2 plus half your level, and the healing is divided amongst all the creatures they damaged. Okay, so basically, whenever an enemy, this is kind of like some of the things we've seen from champions, but whenever an enemy attacks while this is on them, okay, they basically take damage and kind of heal the person that they're damaging. So, and it's obviously 2 plus half your level. So, at level 10, this is doing 7. But it means every time that person damages somebody, they're taking 7 damage, and they're also healing the person they just damaged for 7. Pretty good. Pretty good. And if they fail, that lasts, again, until we refresh. So, that could be a great way to shut down a single target's ability to produce damage. All right. Or maybe we want something a little bit more, healy. Soothing recovery. We release a field of life energy into our allies, soothing them and helping them recover from harm. You end all persistent damage affecting your living allies within 30 feet. Boom. No counteract. No bullshit DC 15. No bullshit DC. Oh, it's particularly appropriate. No DC 10. This is an effective and powerful way to get rid of all persistent damage affecting all your allies within 30 feet of you. Okay. That is a 65-foot diameter circle. All right. In addition, after clearing all persistent damage effects from them, no roll, no check, no flat check, no counteract check, none of that bullshit. It just works. Okay. Then that energy clings to them a little bit. They gain a temporary hit point for every level you have, which lasts until the next time we refresh. So, hey, by the way, we're level 10. Boom. Everybody clear all your persistent damage. Also, everybody get 10 temporary hit points. And until the next time I refresh, if we roll a success on an ongoing save against poison or disease, we get a critical success instead. So, just a little bit of cherry on top at the bonus. But, now is this more niche? Yes, and at a certain point, just like with spellcasters, you don't need 17 ways to heal your party. But when you have so many powers to choose from over the course of the game, you start to be like, okay, I can afford to take some more niche powers at higher levels that do one specific thing, but do it really well. And again, I'm not like, when you choose a power like this, and then you get an opportunity to use it, and then you've got to make some sort of bullshit counteract check, or you have to you give everybody a flat, everybody gets an additional chance to shake off the persistent damage, right? Which is DC 15. And then a bunch of people don't roll 15 and you've done nothing, right? That's so frustrating. Also, starting at 5th level, you can now prepare 5 powers a day instead of 4. So, the game even ratchets up how many powers you get as the game goes on. Now, I'm assuming it might even go up above that. I wouldn't want it to go all the way up to 19, but awesome. Don Pokey says, life is probably where the differences between Eldamon versus PF2 ability design are most present. There is sense in what a 3-action heal or 2-action lifelink does in a hypothetical ideal situation versus these powers. Dompoki, what do you specifically mean here? Okay, niche and tactical options are, of course, present in both with how much there is. But with Vesticle and limiting spell slots, having these as powers just feels so much better. Yeah. I mean, for me, the main thing here is this is a pretty niche ability, and it just works. There's no roll, there's no check, and I think that's just the way it should work. Life Rebound. So we're up to level 7. You protect your ally from harm by causing their spent life force to stretch and rebound back to them for a fleeting moment to help them survive a follow-up attack. Choose a living creature within 30 feet. Until the next time you refresh, whenever that creature takes damage and loses actual hit points, not temporary hit points, they gain temporary hit points equal to the number of hit points they lost or twice your level, whichever is lower. They last until the end of the current creature's turn. All right, so basically, if you think an enemy is going to hit you multiple times in a turn, all right, and you hit them with life rebound, you put this on somebody and it's just like, they take 20 damage. So they're going to get a 20 or twice your level. So assuming we're level 10. So they're going to gain 20 temp, right? And so a second attack against them has to go through their temp first, right? And then, of course, that it only lasts until the end of that creature's turn. So it doesn't ever help them against the first attack, right? Because it ends until the end of that current creature's turn. But remember, once we put life rebound on them, it lasts until we refresh. This one I could see being kind of niche. It really depends on whether or not a creature is going to be actually able to hit you multiple times. If you're being attacked once basically per turn realistically. So I would say life rebound is kind of bad in a situation where you're fighting a bunch of monsters. But if you're fighting like one or two higher level monsters who have a much greater chance of hitting you with their first, their second, or their third attack, then life rebound becomes much more of an appealing option, right? But again, the tactics, which is what this is all about. It's about having different options for different situations. Or we could have the Path of Life. We trail vibrant energy behind us. When we stride or tumble through, we leave behind glimmering life energy in the spaces you entered during the movement, which lasts until the end of our next turn. Keep track of actual hit points living creatures lose while they are within your Path of Life. When they start their turn in the Path of Life, they regain hit points equal to 1d4 plus 1d4 for every level you have, or the amount of hit points they lost within the Path of Life, whichever is less. Undead creatures take damage. Even if it starts its turn, blah, 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 blah. So this is a great example of a very complex power that could, in the right hands, be very, very, very powerful, because you could potentially stride through your entire party in one turn, and then when they start their turn, they all regain, in our case, 11d4 healing. Very powerful. Yes, and of course, Sims, you could also, always, you don't have to choose a level 7 power. If you want both of the level 5 powers, you could choose Overflowing Spill, and then at level 7, you could choose Soothing Recovery. 9th level, Forced Link. By the way, we're not even into the higher tier powers yet. You forcibly link your life force with that of a nearby enemy, causing them some of the harm meant for you. Choose a living foe within 30 feet. Whenever you take damage, the foe loses a number of hit points equal to half your level, or the amount of damage you would take, whichever is less. Reduce the damage you take by the same amount. And they can try to make a will save. On a success, it lasts for only one round. On a failure, it lasts until refresh. So this is like a pain shield, right? So, hey, whenever I take damage, you take damage, and I don't take as much damage. So if I'm the single target, right, I can basically stack all the damage that's being done to me and put it into one foe, even if it's not the foe that's attacking me. Plus, I'm reducing the damage I'm taking, which is, again, pretty sweet. That's a pretty effective damage shield, right? It's very compelling. Vital Breath, 2 action. We breathe out a cone. And by the way, tactically, I like cones because cones make you think. Cones require careful positioning. Cones are an example of high tactical play. Smart positioning, good positioning can make it a cone be able to hit 3 or 4 or 5 targets. Bad positioning sometimes will make a cone only hit 1 or 2. You breathe out a cone of vibrant energy, choosing to breathe life into a cone ranging from 15 to 60 feet. Living creatures regain 1d4 temp, or gain 1d4 temp plus d4 temp for every level, and a +1 status bonus to attack rolls, while undead take this damage. So again, we're looking at level 10, an 11d4 temporary hit point AoE, right? So that's about 28, 30 temporary hit points that we could potentially put on our entire party if we're smart, right? Like if we can position it well, if we can align well, if we can move well. It's not just our movement, it's our allies' movement. Hey, you move there, you move there, you move there, and then I'll move here and I'll do my vital breath and I'll hit everybody in the party with a 30 temporary hit point damage shield and give you a bonus to your attack rolls, right? And like you said, yeah, hey, this is a higher level power, right? We have a little bit more tactical flexibility. We can do it out to 60. We can do it out to 55. This is not only asking you to play well, this is asking your allies, your team to work well, right? Because if your team can put themselves into the right position, then they could potentially all benefit from this temporary hit point buff, right? So what I like about a power like Vital Breath is how it doesn't just ask you, the Eldamon, to tactically position and play well. It also requires communication with your allies. Hey, everybody, I'm thinking of doing this. Let's look at our initiative order. What are the options that we have available? Oh, Rogue, you were thinking about running around to the back side of that enemy to flank and start sneak attacking. Can you maybe delay until after me so that I can get the vital breath off first? And it's like, yeah, we can make that work, right? Like it encourages that sort of tactical team-based play, which I think is just pretty awesome. So I'm a big fan of that. The man, the myth, the legend himself is here. Arcane Mark, everybody. Mark Seifter. Keep in mind also with Force Link, normally you would put your big debuff on the big boss, but it might be smarter here sometimes to choose a mook because they have a better chance of critical failing. I mean, yeah, exactly. My initial thought was just, to put it on onto the boss, if you will. But because it's twice as much on a critical failure, it could be a really great way to basically not only kill a lower level foe quickly, but provide yourself with a ton more damage mitigation. So yeah, just that alone is a crazy thing. By the way, another thing you'll notice again about I just want to call it elevated game design. Notice that when saves do come up, okay, there's almost always an effect on the success. Right. It might only last for a round instead of till refresh. Right. But it's never the case that basically success might as well be, go home. This does nothing. One of the reasons that we always talk about slow being such a powerful spell, not only is being slowed a really powerful status effect, it's because even if you cast it on a foe that's the same level as you or one or two levels above you, they're probably going to succeed or they have a really good chance of succeeding, but slow still slows them for one round. And so you're still getting something for your effect, and that's saying something when that's coming out of a spell slot, right? This isn't even using a spell slot. This is just a power that you get back with a refresh. Exactly, Mark. Yes, you're not damaging the boss, but you're now getting twice as much mitigation. And you're kind of dealing with this, off target that might not otherwise being even noticed by the party, right? See here. Life was challenging, but very fun to write. Yeah, I mean this, and I was saying this before, but Mark's here now, and I'll just say this again. I played a cleric from level 1 to 20, and don't get me wrong, they can heal like nobody's business. But I would almost rather be able to heal less. I mean, heals for more than enough. I would rather be able to heal less. I'm not even necessarily saying that this does heal less. I think in some cases this has the potential to heal more through this party-wide damage mitigation of temporary hit points and healing motes and all this other stuff. But I would still, even if you told me, I did the math and a cleric just spam casting heal is still more effective. Fine. I would still rather play this because this is going to require me to think like a human being and actually play the game and be awake at the table. Spamming your highest level heals to just heal is very effective in Pathfinder 2. It is admittedly quite boring. And while there are certainly different ways and elements that clerics can choose and blah, 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 you know, and while that is true that a cleric can't spam cast heal all day, the fact of the matter is the way that most people play, the way that most adventures are written, usually it is very unusual that you are going to run out of all your free heals, all your, you know, whatever. But your point is taken. All right, so now we're into the higher levels. We're into the teens. 11th level. Well, the double digits. Vital collapse. You collapse an existing bundle of life force into an explosion that harms nearby foes. Now, one of the things that we have to kind of keep in mind here is most of these powers have been, healing. And the handful of ones that do damage, the handful of ones that do damage have typically been against undead only, right? And that's fine. We have different Eldamon potentially that we could switch to that could give us different damaging capabilities. Perhaps we chose to go into our life Eldamon to summon our life Eldamon because we wanted the healing. But whenever you see a power that pops out and says, hey, here's an opportunity for you to maybe do some real damage, it's one of those things where it's like, maybe this is a nice thing to have in my back pocket. It might not come up all the time, but when a class or an energy or element type is so limited in its ability to do damage, this is something that we should pay attention to. Okay. So choose yourself or an ally within 60 feet. So extended range here, which I like. We're getting higher level now. And that's one of the things that we want to keep in mind. Your choice of target must have temporary hit points from one of your life powers. We remove all of those temporary hit points and the life energy explosively collapses. This deals vitality damage. Okay, so only against undead, or force damage. And we don't even have to pick. It's whatever is better in each individual case. Equal to your level, plus the number of temporary hit points from your life powers to all of the target's foe within a 10-foot radius emanation. Vital collapse does not interact with the special reservoir from shared vitality. So, this is awesome because what this does is it says, hey, you know that 80-point temporary, right? Think about this. This is the classic example, like where I talk about like the champion who invests in all the shield feats, right? And they go, I have a full plate power. I have full plate and I'm going in and I'm going to raise my shield. So now my armor class is even higher. I've got armor, I'm armor expert before anybody else. My AC is 6 points higher than anybody else in the party. And my shield is raised. And if you attack me, I'm going to use shield block and I'm going to mitigate the damage. It's going to be sweet. As a GM, I understand that sometimes you just go, I'm going to go attack the champion and make them feel good. But a lot of times you kind of go, I don't really want to attack you. I'm just going to go attack the softer targets. So when you put a 70 or 80 damage shield on one of your allies and the GM, I'm not saying that they're being gamey. I mean, sometimes this stuff could make sense even in the fiction of your character world, but there's a certain amount of gaminess. The GM kind of goes, no, I'm not going to just throw myself ineffectively into your temporary hit points. I'm just going to ignore that character. I'm just going to ignore that target. Well, great. I'm going to blow it up and I'm going to turn it into a unbelievably powerful AoE explosion. And it's an emanation, by the way, so it doesn't hit the person that is being hit with it. That is awesome. Like that is so cool. And I love that it's vitality or force, whichever is better. So, and force damage does, damage to everybody. So this isn't just like one of those undead only. I mean, you could even set up a situation where you're like, well, the enemies do want to go for but I'm going to shield this person with temporary hit points. They're going to kamikaze into the middle. We're going to set up our initiative where they're going to kamikaze into the middle of a group of enemies. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to blow them up just to do, 80 damage to everybody in a 10-foot emanation. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. It's a lot of damage. Again, you have to set it up and that's a very cool power. I would almost certainly have this power. Let me catch up with chat here. There we go. Vital collapse punishes the foes who try to get tricky by bypassing your temporary HP protected allies for the squishier ones. Sweet. And absolutely. I mean, it's great. And even like the Sims, even this is kind of like there's almost kind of like an implied nature here of like, you guys were ignoring the person I protected, so I'm going to punish you for ignoring that. So yeah. All right. Vibrant Inoculation. Okay, so we got our first 3 action power, I think, for the life. So this better be good. You know what I like? All right. You create a giant needle of life energy that surrounds you and your allies in a thin protective layer, keeping out sickening agents. You and all allies within a 120-foot line gain 1d4. So remember, it's not just all living creatures like some of them have been. This is only you and your allies. Within a 120-foot line, gain 1d4 temporary hit points plus 1d4 temporary hit points, which lasts until you refresh. So this is our AoE temporary hit points. However, it's only our allies, but like with the cone, this is asking us all to be in a single line. And because it's a line, by the way, that means it starts with us and shoots out, right? So literally, our character basically shoots out a beam from ourselves out to 120 feet. And any of our allies, including ourselves, that are in that line get these bonus hit points. So again, another way, we now have 2 ways to give our party AoE temporary hit points, right? We could hit them with the vital breath. But remember, the vital breath is living creatures. So we could potentially run the risk of hitting our enemies. Vibrant Inoculation is just our allies, but now it's even more restricted. We have to be in a line. However, as long as a creature has any of these temporary hit points, they reduce any sicken value they receive by 1, and we get a +2 status bonus on fortitude saves. And like all these other things, it also does some damage against undead. Interesting. Well, sickened is a very powerful status. And a +2 status bonus to fortitude saves, all fortitude saves, is nothing to sneeze at. By the way, this is anytime we would receive sickened. So as long as that shield is up, then if we would get sickened 1, we are not sickened at all. It's not like it's a temporary reduction in your sickened value. So you would need to get sickened 2 just to be sickened 1. And that's pretty powerful. Sickened is very powerful. Sickened in fear, frightened. One of the reasons that the fighter's ability, right, bravery, is so powerful is because it basically just makes them immune to acquiring frightened 1. Life Conductor. So we're 13 now. We only have about 8 or 9 more powers to go. Oh, this would be incredible against an enemy that makes you sickened. I mean, obviously, an ally only temp HP is pretty powerful. But to really get the biggest bang for your buck on this, against a sickened enemy at best. I am curious, Mark, if you're still here, why is this one 3 actions? I mean, I get that it has that allies only thing, but because the one thing I guess about this, I mean, I'm not saying it's a knock against the power, but because you can't move, right? Because it's a 3 action power, it means that your allies, your team, have to do the lifting, right? They all have to get into position on their turn aligned up with your line. And then on your turn, you can do your Vibrant Inoculation, right? Because otherwise, like, you could move and then line. So this kind of requires, a little bit more of a heavy app. Now, granted, I don't know if that makes it weaker or stronger, but it does make it more cool, which I like. So we added the 3rd action after playtesting. Interesting. So it was too powerful as 2, huh? But yeah, it does mean your allies want to be in position or at least start their way. And yeah, yes. Obviously, if you're quicken, I mean, yes, that is true. But anyways, very cool power. And the fact that it's allies only does have a nice little benefit of, especially when the battlefield starts to get conducted. But again, it's telling your player, once you have that ability, you always need to be letting your players know, or your fellow teammates know, hey guys, if there's not a penalty for us not to do this, try to end in a line. Line up with me, because then if I need to inoculate everybody, I can. And it enters into the pace of play. Oh, don't go to that square. That's outside of the line. Go over here. And then you'll be in the line. And it's like, yeah, you need to, and it's like, it's going to require you to always be talking to each other. That's what's so cool about it. You can't just play all like, you just can't face roll the keyboard like you would in a normal encounter, if you want to get the biggest bang for your buck. All right. Life Conductor. You take control of all healing and rejuvenation around you. You gain temporary hit points equal to twice your level, which lasts until you refresh. Boom, right off the bat. We're level 13, so 26 temp. Whenever a living creature within 60 feet of us regains hit points, whether it's from healing magic, fast healing, regeneration, or some other means, or if they regain temporary hit points, which we know we can put out a lot, you can choose to redirect half of that healing or half of that temporary hit points to a different target of your choice within 60 feet who did not gain any healing from the same effect. If the originator of the healing is not willing to allow this, which probably will never come up, you have to make a counter-attack check. Wow. So that's pretty cool. So this basically means in those situations before where we might have been over-healing or there was too much temp or we want to split it up, we can now give ourselves a temporary shield. And then whenever 60 feet comes up, you're kind of spreading it out. I mean, Derek, it comes up if it's your enemies. Oh, Mark. Oh, Mark, I didn't even think of that. If your enemy's trying to heal or your enemy's trying to regenerate, you can steal it and give it to your own allies. Oh, that's so sick. Oh, Mark, I didn't even see. Look, I didn't even think about that. Oh, man. Oh, that's awesome. I mean, you might be thinking like, obviously, there are enemies out there that have healing magic, but there's a lot of enemies out there in the game that have fast healing and regeneration. You get all of it, Oh, that is so clutch. That is so awesome. Sims wants to remind us, oh, by the way, we're level 13 now. So now we prepare 2 sets of 6 different powers, which we can switch between when we refresh. You hear that, folks? So now we have 2 different hotbars. Okay. So we have this hotbar of powers and we have this hotbar of powers. And when we refresh, we can bring up this hotbar or we can bring up this hotbar. The tactical choices are exploding. It's incredible. It's amazing. Like the fact, don't get me wrong. I would have figured this out eventually if I was playing the game and actually using it. But Mark kind of ruined it for me because he told me. But the moment I would have realized that I could do this to any healing and I could steal somebody else's regeneration or steal somebody else's fast healing or somebody's heal spell, I would have been giddy. I would have been just like, so good. Anyways, that's awesome. All right. Well, what else can we do at level 13? Lifeguard Bubble. 2 action. You create a glowing bubble that prevents leaking life energy from departing. This bubble exists in a 20-foot emanation around you, and creatures can move in and out. GM Scott, with his 30-month member message, says it was the opposite of Paizo's razor. Yes, it was. Normally, you read something and you think, oh, that's really cool. And then you read it again or somebody points something out to you and you realize that the cool thing that you thought it does actually doesn't work, or it wasn't actually written that way, or it wasn't intended that way and it's got errated. This is the opposite. I read it. I was like, this is neat. And then someone's like, but it does even more than that. And it's meaningful. And I was like, holy shit. Mark's apologizing. He says, but you probably weren't going to actually play it if you aren't playing Pathfinder 2, so better to mention it. I agree, Mark. Certainly not up to level 13, but I got to admit, these kind of tactical, very demanding power sets and all these intricate interlocking, interweaving pieces. I get it. It's not for everybody, but this is the kind of high level play stuff that I really like. All right. Lifeguard Bubble, 20-foot. All right. So 2 actions. We create a glowing bubble around us, 20-foot emanation, and creatures can move in and out of this bubble effortlessly. It only traps leaking life energy. You have to keep track. I love the idea of that we're now tracking we're tracking on a separate resource. We keep track of any actual hit points, not temporary hit points, real hit points that you and your allies lose while within the bubble. The bubble pops at the beginning of your next turn, or just before you or an ally would reach 0 hit points, whichever comes first. So at the start of our next turn, or if someone would basically go down. When the bubble pops, you can heal a total of 7 hit points plus 7 hit points for every level you have, which you can distribute however you like amongst yourself and your allies. As normal for a recovery effect, this can't heal an individual creature for more hit points than they lost while that bubble was active. Interesting. Now, this is very needly, because this is very like, because you're basically having to now track everybody's hit points. I mean, now, but again, now I know this sounds terrible, but this is a way of making you pay attention and stay active and be like, okay, you lost 10 and you lost 20 and you lost 5. So when the healing comes, I get this distribution, but I can't heal somebody for more than they, lost, but it lets you sort of divvy up and divide this. That being said, I'd have a hard time not taking Life Conductor, but Lifeguard Bubble is pretty powerful. I just like that the guy who hates builds so much sounds like he's excited to assemble a build, but like in a good way. Yeah, I mean, my whole idea with builds, Karama, is I don't like denying myself the opportunity to have legitimately fun choices. I don't mind the concept of builds per se. What I don't like is somebody being level 1 and then making a character progression and this idea of, yeah, I'm not really excited to play my character until level 13 when I come online, or I'm making a bunch of shitty decisions now and having a subpar play experience just so I can get good at level 17. I don't like that kind of mentality of thinking, of feeling like the game is already written in stone for me. I like discovering through play what powers and abilities I want to take and filling in the gaps that are appearing in the game, the party, and the adventure that we're playing on. That to me is very exciting. Don Pokey peaked at Eldamon Trainer since rules-bending feats arrive now. Some strategic gameplay arrives at level 14 with the Eldamon flexibility for once-a-day retraining into Life Conductor for, when you really, really need it. Yeah, right. And obviously the complexity level is going up and we're getting a lot more flexibility, right? I mean, yeah, against some enemies, this would be, imagine fighting a group of high-level trolls and having Life Conductor. And you're just taking that regeneration 10 or regeneration 15 and you're just stealing half of it and doling it out to all of your party members. Like, what an awesome encounter that would be. All right, level 15. I didn't realize this was going to take past just to do one. Now, I should point out, this is one power set, people. There's like 13 or something in the book. Okay? And I'm telling you, when I say that, you can see fire plays completely different to this. Water, plays completely different to this. Darkness plays completely different to this. It's not just the same powers, but with different damage types. It's completely different. The way the subsystems are different. And it's almost like it's an entirely different class. All right. So now we're up to 15th level, and Sims wants to remind us that at 15th level, if we were the elemental avatar, we can choose to double down on our element and get 3 more powers, or we could pick a new element and choose some power from that element and reflavor them to our element. So even with an avatar that is locked into one element, you're kind of not to at this level. All right. Arcane Mark says, if you do that troll encounter, bring a conductor rod and wave it around to the allies that get the regen. You get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car. And you get regeneration, and you get regeneration, and you get regeneration. All right. You cause your foe's life force to congeal around them in shackles, holding them down. Living foes within 30-foot emanation are affected depending on their fortitude save and their current hit points. By the way, this is living foes, so this is your allies too. The foe is unaffected on a critical success. On a success, the foe is shackled by their own life force. If they are at maximum HP, they are stunned 3. And otherwise, they are stunned 2. This is what happens if they pass the fortitude save. Now, they can reduce or remove the stunned condition value by an amount of their choosing. Living foes? It's just living foes. Oh, this is even better than I thought. I was like, I still, Mark, I thought it was all living creatures. And when I saw that they could be stunned 3 on a success, I was already like, this is totally fine. But it's living foes, so it just doesn't work against the undead or constructs. Are those the only things that are considered unliving, undead, and constructs? They don't have hit points, even though they don't have life, even though they have hit points. Anyways, so the fight starts. You move forward right into the middle of your enemies, and boom, you drop life shackles. Everybody's at max hit points, right? So they're all stunned 3. Now they can reduce or remove the stunned value by an amount of your choosing by choosing to lose hit points equal to our level times the amount that they wish to reduce the stun value. This means that if every enemy passes their fortitude save, they are all stunned 3, or they could be completely fine if they all take, we're level 15, they all take 45 damage. And this is what happens if they pass the save. I don't even want to know what happens if they fail the save. I mean, I do. We're going to find out. But that's if they pass. If they fail, they're stunned 4 if they're below half their maximum, stunned 5 if they're at half their maximum, and stunned 6. Have you ever even seen that in Pathfinder 2 before? It technically exists because the stun thing has that whole rules text, right? About how on your turn, when you would gain 3 actions, instead you lose actions equal to your stun value and reduce the stun value by that amount. As long as your stun value is positive, you cannot act, right? We all know that language. But has anything ever given stun 6 before, or stun 4, or stun 5? I don't think so. Stunned 6. That is, I mean, they are not acting for 2 full rounds. But not only are they not acting, they can't act. That means no reactions. That means no free actions. Oh, or they could take 90 damage. 90 damage. Pop. And if they critically fail, they're not doing anything because they lose hit points equal to twice your level. So if they were stunned 6 and you were level 15, they would have to take 180 damage to not be stunned at all. And this is a 30-foot, this is a 2-action, 30-foot emanation that only affects our foes. Wow. Wow, that is awesome. I mean, that's control and damage and you know, yes, your enemy does get to make a choice. They get to make the choice of, do I take an unbelievable amount of damage or do I sit out the fight? But that is brutal. And it's also, again, I should point out, creates an interesting thing for your allies. Because if you're not planning on using this on the first round of fighting, you might tell your team, hey, everybody gang up on a single foe. Leave everybody at their max HP for as long as you can. If we can avoid doing, you know, trickle damage or little dink shot damage or little AoEs, please do that, because then when I go and use my shackles, we're going to get a much bigger bang for our buck, right? So, hey, everybody focus on this target, leave everything else alone. I'm going to lock them down later. If we spread out the damage, or we do a bunch of AoEs, or we do a bunch of emanation-based damage, everybody's going to be down below half. And, you know, we're not going to, you know, I'm not going to get as much bang for my buck on this. Again, it encourages teamwork to get the best value. I mean, if they accept stun 6, they're still going to take the damage, that damage in the 2 rounds they don't get to act. No, I don't think they, I mean, they might take damage from being stunned and just sitting there, but no, I don't think they take any damage from life shackles. Hey, Derek, wouldn't you like to be on the GM side and the player locks you into making a tactical decision for your monsters like this? Stun 6. Ooh, but can they take the damage that for round 1? I mean, yeah, I mean, that's a Faustian bargain to make, you know? Now look, I'm not going to lie. You know, this is a complex power. Now, for every monster in the battle, I have to decide, how much stun do I want to buy off? And I have to look at their powers and say, okay, this guy's going to burn off 6. This guy's going to burn off 4. This guy's going to burn off 2. This guy's going to burn off 4. You know, it is a thing. And by the way, this isn't some like once a day power. This is a 2-action shared vitality. When I refresh, I get this power back. I could do this potentially multiple times per fight. I could do this at the beginning of the fight. Then I could refresh, and then I could do it again. All right. Shared vitality is our other level 15 power. Oh, yes. Okay. You just mean the party will kick their ass. Yes, I agree. Yeah, every other turn you could do that. All right. Shared vitality. You connect all of your allies to a shared reservoir of vitality, protecting them from all harm. Notice, again, that stuff that was 30 feet, 15 feet at lower levels, it's now up to 60 feet. We're higher level. The monsters are bigger. The battlefields are bigger. Characters are flying 60 feet. You know, characters have land speeds at 60 feet per round. They're flying 90 feet. The battlefield effects, the battlefields are bigger. You need bigger effects. So now, you and all allies within 60-foot emanation, that's a 125-foot diameter bubble. When you use shared vitality, gain a special reservoir of temporary hit points, which is 5 temp plus 5 temp for every level that we have. So we're level 15, so that is 80 temporary hit points. This special reservoir of temporary hit points is shared among you and all those allies. And I was kind of like, that's not, I mean, that's good, but that's not that great. And then we got unpiezoed. We got Paizo's donuts, the opposite of Paizo's Halloween candy, the opposite of Paizo's razor. I love how it's like, since technically, it's almost like the wording of the ability itself is like saying, on a technicality, since this is a separate reservoir, it is cumulative with your normal temporary hit points. Temporary hit points are lost from the reservoir first before any individual creature loses their temporary hit points or actual hit points. So this means we could send out the inoculation or the energy wave or the life wave, and we could hit all of our allies with, we're level 15 now. So I think it would be like almost 100 temporary hit points from our wave, right? So we would hit everybody with like 100 temporary hit points. But then we could also put an additional bubble of temporary hit points around them, which we can dole out from that first before we get to their 100 temporary hit point buffer, before we actually get to their actual hit points. And again, this reservoir lasts until we refresh. So once they eat through all this, once they eat through the shared vitality and they eat through the inoculation, we refresh, put ourselves in the life cocoon, and then we could start putting out that temporary hit points bubbles again. That is so cool to me. And again, I played a Discipline Priest in WoW. I love Power Word Shield. I love Prayer of Mending. I love all of these sort of proactive healing spells. I think they're so cool and they're so fun. All right. 17th level, almost near the end here. Life Storm. 3 actions. Okay, another 3 actions. We call forth a vibrant storm of glowing vital energy. It fills a 20-foot radius burst within 120 feet of you. So this is a rarity for us. This is actually something that isn't like point blank from us. It actually is a kind of a fireball, right? It's 120 feet away from us. If you're living or a living ally enter or start your turn in the area, we gain temporary hit points equal to 10 plus your level, which lasts for 1 round. And undead creatures that enter or start their turn in the area take the same amount of damage. It lasts until you refresh. A creature only takes vitality damage once during each of its turns, even if it enters and leaves. So this basically creates a zone that for the rest, until we refresh, anytime an ally enters or starts in the area, they basically gain 27 temp. But they could start their turn every turn in that area or walk through it. They can only get it once per their turn. But it means that if we position it well, or our allies are willing to move through it, they could potentially regain 27 temp each turn. It's a lot of temporary hit points. It also has the potential to damage undead at the same time. So yeah, if any undead are stuck fighting you in melee, it's going to be brutal because they're going to be taking auto 27 damage. You're going to be auto 27 temporary hit points, and it's just going to go out over and over again. It also should go without saying that this is a unique ability for us, right? We've seen the cone and the line and the emanation, but we really haven't seen the ability for us to affect anything at this kind of long range. So that gives us a lot of reach as well. All right. Vital Singularity is another 3 action one. So all of our 17th level options are 3 actions. You combine yourself and several allies into a single amalgam of life force, distributing the shared vitality between you however you see fit. Choose up to 3 non-minion allies of your level or higher within 40 feet of you. They don't all need to be within 40 feet of each other. You and the allies you choose momentarily merge into a singularity of life energy and then instantly separate. When you separate, you and the allies can choose to switch positions with each other. You can also distribute the hit points of yourself and the allies however you choose, except no one can receive fewer than 1 hit point or more than their maximum hit points. This only works for actual hit points. So, you know, this person's taken a bunch of damage. This person's taken a bunch of damage. These two people have not taken any damage. You merge into a single ally. You combine all your total hit points. You redistribute however is best tactically, and then you put yourselves back into new positions if you need to. That's pretty cool. And again, this isn't like a once a day ability. Sure, it's your whole round, but you're basically potentially redistributing the hit points in a very tactical way that's going to heal the people who are hurt and maybe borrow from the damage of people who can afford to lose it. You're also swapping positions of allies up to yourself plus 3 others. That's a lot of movement and healing and activity for 3 actions. So sure, it's 3 actions, but at least you're literally fundamentally reshifting the nature of the battlefield as well as everyone's current HP total. Afterwards, you gain temporary hit points equal to your level. So as a kicker, we all then gain 17 temporary hit points. So kind of heal everybody, put a healing shield on everybody, also reposition everybody. That's not bad for 3 actions. It's not bad. Right. This is what a 3-action spell should be, or 3-action activity should be doing. This feels like I'm getting my bang for my buck. I mean, in comparison, right, using a 2-action heal, right, the ranged heal spell, from a cleric, and then using reach spell turns that into a 3-action activity, which lets you target one ally within 60 feet now instead of 30 feet and heal them for, a bunch of D8s plus, 84 or something. All right. Level 19s introduce a new trait, ultimate. So up until this point, nothing we have done has had a cooldown. Ultimates have a cooldown. So if we use one of these powers, I believe we can only use them once an hour. So we can't use this and then refresh and then use it again and then refresh and use it again. So this is kind of like a once a fight, maybe once every other fight type ability, depending on the timing of your battles. All right. So these are it. This is our ultimate near capstone ability. Okay. Amrita. You pour a drop of hyper concentrated liquid life energy on a mortally injured or recently dead creature, allowing them to experience a fragment of immortality. Choose a living creature or a dead creature that died within the last round and they're within 30 feet. The creature gains 150 hit points and returns to life if they were dead, although not if they were killed by disintegration or death. Additionally, attempt to counteract check against every poison and disease, using your DC minus 10 as your counteract check level and half your level round up as your level. If you fail to remove an affliction this way, the affliction becomes temporarily immune for 24 hours. So 150 hit point, heal, and or raise dead, and we get to potentially end all poisons and diseases on them. So yeah, I mean, bring back the dead is pretty powerful. And again, it is on a 1 hour cooldown, but theoretically we could do this. I'm assuming most people are fighting and then treating wounds for 20 to 30, 40 minutes anyways. You kind of basically get one of these per fight. Most of the time you're going to get one of these per fight, maybe once every other fight, but most of the time once a fight. Or we could go with Elysium, 3 actions. By the way, this Amrita is only 2 actions to bring someone back from the dead. Elysium, 3 actions. Calling upon the beautiful life force of ancient heroes, you transform your very surroundings into a beautiful glowing field. The area on the ground within a 60-foot emanation, basically a massive area, the whole battlefield, becomes an Elysian field until you refresh or 4 rounds, whichever comes first. You and your living allies don't take any damage from hazardous terrain, and instead, you and your living allies regain 20 hit points, not temporary hit points, regain 20 hit points when starting a turn in the area. If we receive at least 1 hit point this way, we get a +2 status bonus to attack rolls, perception checks, saving throws, and skill checks until their next turn. Basically, a level 6 heroism. This area is hazardous terrain to undead, dealing 5 vitality damage for every square that undead enters. 5 vitality damage, remember, also triggers their weakness to vitality damage. So this is definitely a kind of more of a niche thing. because it's going to be very powerful against undead that are moving around. It's going to be very useful if there's a lot of hazardous terrain. But I'm a bigger fan of Amrita. And actually, honestly, I would almost be fine not choosing either one of these ultimate powers just to take some of these more of these awesome lower level powers. And that is very compelling when you're like, man, I would be very happy with, life conductor and shared vitality and life shackles rather than the so-called ultimate powers. So to finish off, we talked about at the beginning of the game, this vital sacrifice, right? Because remember, on top of everything else that we're doing, we can still have this reaction that lets us spontaneously heal somebody and reduce the damage and then take some damage to ourselves, right? But as we get higher level, we might want to take more of these reactions. Remember, reactions are very useful and powerful. They essentially give us 4 actions a turn, 3 + 1. So we could also end up with retributive rejuvenation. Trigger, a foe deals damage to you. We convert that foe's assault into life energy. We gain fast healing for 2 rounds equal to 4 plus half of our level, or half the amount of actual hit points that we lost from the damage, whichever is less. So if we take 10 damage, we could regain 4 plus half our level, which would be like 6 or 7. Or if we took 10 damage, it would be 5. So whichever is less, we take the 5. As normal for a recovery effect, this fast healing can't heal you for more than the amount of hit points you lost, even if you receive another recovery effect or have an effect that increases the amount of healing. Okay, so that means that this can only heal us for the damage that we took from this attack? Is that right? Yeah, that is right. Okay. So basically, it heals us up. Like, let's assume we got hit for, very conveniently, right? We got hit for, this is healing for 4 equal to 4 plus half our level. So, half our level is 5, so 2, 7. So if we got hit for 14 damage, this would heal us for 7 and then 7, and then we would heal up that 14 damage that we took from this. Interesting. So again, you have to be very tactical. You might not want to waste this on a weak hit, right? If you get hit for if we got hit for 30 damage, this would give us fast healing 7 for 4 or 5 rounds, But see, yeah, but again, it's asking you to pay more attention. It is requiring you to do a little bit more work. But I mean, I think that is fine. I think that's what a lot of people play Pathfinder 2 for, All right. Mortal Reprieve. A foe deals damage to you. So this is another reaction. You call upon life to suspend any incoming harm, giving you time to deal with it before it lays it low. You don't take the damage until the beginning of that foe's next turn. You normally take any other effects that come at the same time, so you would still be frozen or something like that. However, if the secondary effect is contingent on the damage being dealt, such as from a snake's fangs or rat or ghoul's jaws, you don't take that secondary effect either. During that intervening time, you can choose to use any healing or temporary hit points you receive from your own life powers to instead reduce the incoming damage. If you reduce it to 0, you never took the damage, which means you don't take the secondary effect either. That's awesome. So you basically put the damage on hold. And by the way, remember how I was saying one of the reasons I love this is because I love Book of Nine Swords. So there's a class in here called the Crusader. And what the Crusader gets, it's a class feature of the Crusader. They're kind of like a paladin, but they get an ability called Retribution. And basically when they take damage, they don't take the damage right away. It goes into a separate pool. And the more damage that's in their Retribution pool, they do more damage. And then on their turn, they start taking the Retribution damage. And their bonus to attack and damage goes down. But it's kind of like it puts their damage on hold so that they have enough time to net out justice before it finally takes them down, which I really love. So I'm all in on this because that's really cool. And I love that from Book of Nine Swords. We already talked about the life cocoon. So remember, 3 times our level plus it's equal to 3 plus 3 times our level. So, at level 10, it's 33. At level 20, it's 63. And that's a 63 temp, and that gets us back all of our powers, right? This is the bad power, right? Another bad power we could pick up if we want multiple refresh powers, because we want to have more options when we refresh, because we will want to refresh. We could get the preserve life refresh power. This has the refresh power, so this is going to give us back all of our other reactive powers and active powers that we have spent. You reach out to the life forces of your allies around you in order to refresh your life powers, and you gather their spilled vital energy so they can collect it again. We refresh our powers, and until the end of our next turn, keep track of how many actual hit points you and your allies lose as you collect their spilled vital energy. During this time, if an ally ends their turn next to you, they recover 6 HP plus 1 HP for every level you have. However, they can't gain more healing than the number of hit points they lost. At the start of your next turn, you recover 6 HP plus 1 hit point for every level you have, with the same limitation that you can't gain more than you lost. So again, it has that limitation which you can't heal old damage, right? It's like, hey, I'm going to refresh my powers, but any damage that you guys take this turn, okay, if you end your turn next to me, you can get some of it back, and I can get some of the damage I take back. So even though I'm kind of taking the turn off to refresh my powers, it's a way to kind of keep the damage mitigated a little bit. But remember, it doesn't work on basically damage that you already have. And the last refresh that we gain is Life Vortex. We could take this at level 13. You trace a vortex of life energy as you draw all the harms out of the allies around you. You refresh your power. Remember, these refresh powers are supposed to be like you're taking the turn off. So the fact that you get this is pretty awesome. You refresh your powers. You then remove all your temporary hit points. So if you had any temporary hit points, you remove them. For each of your allies within 30 feet, you can choose to lose hit points equal to 10 plus your level, or the amount of hit points they're missing, whichever is left. If you do, you heal your ally, restoring their hit points for an equal amount. After applying all the lost hit points and healing, you gain temporary hit points equal to half the hit points you lost this way. Okay, so this is awesome. So all your temporary hit points end. Okay, then you could take a bunch of damage, okay, from each of your allies within 30 feet to heal them. And so now you've put a bunch of damage onto yourself, and then you get half of that damage you just take back as a temporary life HP total. So it's like you heal the party, you really take a bunch of damage yourself, but then you give yourself back some temporary hit points. And the more damage you take, the bigger the temporary hit points are. So like, you might be like, okay, I'm going to heal everybody around me for a total of 100 damage. And I'm going to take 100 damage. And I'm going to go from like 120 hit points down to 20. But then I took 100 damage, so I'm going to get half of that, okay? Which is 50. I'm going to get 50 temp. So sure, I'm low hit points, but I've got this 50 temporary shield, at least for one round, which gives me enough time to hopefully reset and rebuild my temporary hit points or heal. But I've just like healed my party in a most surgical and tactical way while refreshing my powers. Since Life Vortex doesn't last long on the temp and might be huge, don't sleep on blowing it up on your next turn. See, like these are the combos, right? Because that's a huge temporary bubble. And since it only lasts until the end of your next turn, YOLO, it's that explosion time. Make that HP blow up and do that huge AoE 10-foot emanation. It's so cool. Mark, it's so cool. And this, by the way, isn't even the damaging one. This is the healing one. People, the tactical options just in this one power set are enough for a single class. The combos, and to kind of put this into perspective, if we go back up to like fire, okay, which is one of the more basic ones. Okay. If we go up to fire, so Devour Flames is the core fire ability. Okay. And basically, each foe within 30 feet of you suffering from persistent fire damage immediately takes the persistent fire damage again, and then they get a check to remove it but it's basically, it causes them to get another trigger of the effect, right? In addition, you can put out the fire of your allies. But a great example of this is if you have people in your party, like a kineticist or a caster or some other type of character that can put persistent fire damage onto foes, Devour Flames is a great way to trigger that again, right? And so there are definite ways that these Eldamon and these elemental power sets can work with different builds and different powers. And I think that's what makes it so exciting, because if your party is working together intelligently and smartly, then these powers are probably, in my personal opinion, probably a little broken. Now, it requires finesse, and it requires, a skill, and it requires a certain amount of teamwork. But I think that's what makes these games great. When the sum of your parts, all right, is greater, or when the sum is greater than the parts, that is when you're having a really rewarding and tactical experience. And I know a lot of people, rightfully so, say, oh, Pathfinder 2 is a very tactical game. And it is. But if you're playing with some of these power sets, it puts all these other tactical things to shame. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that I would want to see a party that was, 3 Eldamon trainers. I don't know if that would be crazy and out of pocket. I think these power sets work well when compared and contrasted with some of the other character classes throughout the book. Although I do think a bunch of elemental avatars could be a pretty cool party, because they're all going to have their really unique thing and kind of do their thing. And now you're going to look for ways to combo the different power sets against one another, right? But fundamentally, these are just classes, but it feels like it's like a prestige class, even though it's just a core class. And again, that was just the light, Each of these elemental types has all of these things. And by the way, there are plans eventually, maybe, hopefully someday, to do even more types beyond the ones that were in the core book. There are some like dreams. I'm trying to remember some of the weird ones that they hinted at. So very, very cool stuff. And remember, if you're an Eldamon trainer, the powers that you get and the different abilities that you get are also going to be linked to the specific Eldamon themselves. So not only are you going to be getting your ice power, we going back to our light Pokemon, our light powers that we've been looking at. Earth. Look how many of these things there are. Fire. Geez. Ice. So many. All right, here we go. So we not only have to decide, okay, I want to be using life powers, but like as you adventure and start to gain, and do I want to use Skeppy, the life goat, or do I want to use Ankrub, right? The scarab, right? Or Ankrush in his battle form. And look how cool he is in his ultimate evolved form as Ankepri, right? Because they're going to have different abilities that give them different, little different unique things. They have their own different attacks, right? And then they have their own built-in power progression as well. So, when you're training your Eldamon, you need to like figure out, hey, I want to build this Eldamon this way. And you're like, maybe I want another Eldamon built a different way because, this has different abilities. Like this guy, the Skeppy, has, if you evolve it, it has the Garland of Salvation. Your Garland commemorates those you have saved and empowers you whenever you sacrifice yourself for others. After taking damage to protect another from harm or losing hit points to protect another, such as from your Scapegoat ability, but also remember, a lot of your life powers do this as well. You get +1 status bonus to saving throws and AC until the start of your next turn, until the end of your next turn. Well, the life powers do this anyway. So like this is this thing, the Skeppy and the Hedron is definitely encouraging you to do that kind of self-sacrificial life energy, right? So it's very, very, very cool. Roll for Combat says, I think he likes it. I mean, I think it's sublime design. I mean, and I think, I think it's, don't get me wrong, it's Pokemon. It's got the cutesy elements of Pokemon. It has that, but I mean but it's done in a tasteful way. I don't mind the art style. And I think part of the fun of that is the kind of cutesy, oh, look at this squirrel that's fiery lashing everybody. But yeah, the combos alone take it off to it. RK Mark says, I no joke one time had awful luck on my active fire powers, but my reaction had a faux crit fail, and then I spread the high persistent and devoured flames, and my persistent did more damage than my direct damage spell would have done. And I also agree that, I mean, you know what I mean? Look, I'm a classics. I like the classic D&D game. But in some ways, I think in the modern sense, right, I think Vancian casting is kind of dead. And I think that the focus point system, I think the kineticist power system, I think the Eldamon system, I think are just a better, smarter way to do the way that people are playing games nowadays, right? That we're not just in this sort of dungeon delving resource attrition grind anymore. That's just not the way that most people are playing their D20 fantasy games. And so I think that systems like this just highlight what the system could be and what it should be, than rather than what it is. I think Derek is saying that something will figure it out is a party of all Eldamon trainers, avatars in an actual play one shot. I mean, that would be so crazy. You know what it'll remind me of, for those of you who don't know this, or for those of you who never played City of Heroes. City of Heroes was a superhero MMO. And then they came out with sort of a sister MMO called City of Villains, where everybody got to be a supervillain. And one of the supervillains was called the Mastermind. And the Mastermind's whole thing was they had like, 5 or 6 mooks, like they could actually summon like a bunch of minions, and you had all these powers to, make the minions go in and attack, and you could blow up your minions. Well, me and my friends thought it would be really funny, and we made I don't remember what the name of our party or guild was, but there was like 5 different or 6 different types of Mastermind. There was like the Mastermind that had soldiers, the Mastermind that had robots, the Mastermind that had ninjas, the Mastermind that had zombies, the Mastermind that had like thugs. And we each chose a different Mastermind. So there was like 5 of us going into like a dungeon or a mission or whatever they called them. But we all had like 5 minions. So like we had like 25 minions all running around, and it was kind of crazy. Anyways, that's kind of in my mind like what a party of Eldamon trainers would look like. It would be, crazy. All right, here we go. Body, spirit, metal, time, space, music, and poison. So those are the elemental types that they didn't do in this initial release. And if there's enough support for BattleZoo Eldamon, maybe someday we'll see a follow-up for that. I would love to see it. I just think this is, if some of you remember Pathfinder Unleashed, right? I view this as like Mark Seifter Pathfinder Unleashed. I just love the design in this game. Every element type I've read through, and I haven't read through all of them yet. I think I've only read through like 6 or 7 of them. I haven't read through about half of them. I've just loved it. The design, the ideas, and even saw here tonight. I like to think I'm pretty good at this stuff. There were things that Chat and Mark were pointing out to me that I missed or I didn't see the implication. That's awesome. That's what makes these games so fun, right? Is exploring the space and finding all these cool, unique ways that they combo against each other, Yeah. King Hodop is here. His stream is still going. Let's see if I can put on 2.5 speed and see if I can catch up. Unlikely considering we're at the 3-hour mark. But I don't think we'll be going in an hour. Much focus shifts to turn-by-turn tactics when design moves from the resource-intensive balance of Vancian to powers of all kinds. Incredibly refreshing. So the thing I love about this, though, is it's a tiered system of choices. You start with, what Eldamon do I have? What Eldamon do I get, right? Which Eldamon do I want to go and try to find and explore and add to my stable? What feats do I choose? What elements of my character and my Eldamon do I want to enhance? So that's like this really broad strategic level, right? That you're doing on a, level to level basis, right? When you're picking your feats or going on adventures and let's go to that volcano. I want to get a new Eldamon, that kind of thing. So that's like this really big long-term strategy. That's your build, Then you get the daily preparation strategic point. What are the 3 or more Eldamon, depending on what feats I've taken, that I want to keep in sort of my prepared pool? I might have collected 12, but based on what we think the mission is today, based on what we think the kind of foes that we're going to be facing or the kind of nature of the environment we're in, maybe the cleric didn't show up for the session. Okay, I'm going to bring in a life Pokemon. I'm going to bring in a life Eldamon and a life Eldamon. You can create your stable of prepared Eldamon that you can use to help you make that decision. Then we get more tactical. The fight starts. Great. I can use phase shift for free at the start of an encounter. Which of the 3 Eldamon do I want to start with? Great. Now my Eldamon's in there. Now it's my turn. First decision. Is it time to swap out my Eldamon for another Eldamon? Maybe it is. Have I positioned myself correctly? Have I used Tug Conduit intuitively so that I am close enough to my Eldamon in my phased state to allow them to phase shift? Okay, if it's not time to swap Eldamon, then what power am I going to use? Do I have my reaction up? Which power should I use now or when? Is it time to refresh? If I refresh, what will be the consequences of that? If I do refresh, which refresh power do I use? If I do trigger a reaction, what reaction do I use? Right? So you can just see how the choices here just spill and fall endlessly. And I'm sure there are feats. Someone was mentioning how there's a feat that lets you like once a day do a reconfiguration of your Eldamon. There's a feat that lets you swap between different power sets of your Eldamon. So that's just adding another level to this sort of choice pyramid. So it's agency from the very broadest strategic levels up to the very most minute round to round tactical levels. And I can tell you, I have not played Eldamon, but I have played Gloomhaven. And one of the things about Gloomhaven is you have a handful of really powerful, you have a handful of powers, and some of your powers are really powerful. Like when I was a Cragheart, when I was a Savas Cragheart, I had the really powerful Dirt Tornado, and I had amplified it to do extra damage and to inflict the curse condition, which if you played Gloomhaven is really powerful. If it was up to me, I would just chain cast Dirt Tornado. But when you use your power, it goes in your discard. And you don't get your discards back until you basically refresh and take a short rest. But that has a cost, right? In that game, you have to discard one of those cards for the rest of the mission. So there's a balance between wanting to use your most powerful powers over and over again versus trying to play out and get the most bang for your buck before you have to refresh or take a short rest, as they call it in Gloomhaven. And let me tell you something, that was awesome gameplay. It was awesome gameplay. And it worked really well as a tactical choice within the party. And so I can only assume or be assured that this plays out similarly, if not better. And I think that is a really nice benefit to this system. Plus, if you want to be that kind of player, and I know you do, when you get your Eldamon, right? When you start off with them, right? When you've got your 3 Eldamon in your stable, you can go ahead and pick up these plushies of your Eldamon in your stable. And then when you summon up your Eldamon, you can just be like, oh, who's coming? You can keep them under the table and be like, Boto, I choose you. And you're like, all right, Boto, thanks for doing all of that. Bring your work. Thanks for doing all that hard work, Boto. You go take a rest. Kitopaz, get out here. Arcane Linda always brings her plushies like that. That's awesome. I have to admit, okay, this is me being as real as I can with you right now, okay? You guys know me, and you know I hate all things cute. If I was playing at a real table, I would absolutely have the plushies for all of the Eldamon that I had in my thing. And if they didn't make a plushie for it, I wouldn't take it. Again, I've got the grass snake over here somewhere. I don't know where it is, but anyways, yeah, I'd just be like, oh yeah, Squirrel Ash is coming out, and I would, put it on the table next to my character sheet. And then when Squirrel Ash gets knocked out, or gets defeated, or if I send Squirrel Ash back because it's time for Boto to come out and do his Boto stuff, I would totally just be like, pew, Boto, get out here and finish what Squirrel Ash started. And pretty much everything would kind of come in. Dan says, only as a joke, but how much did Steven pay you for this stream, or is this free marketing? It's just free marketing. I mean, to be clear, the patrons have voted, several times throughout the last couple of weeks, and some have expressed an interest in returning to the world of Eldamon. So, I do take my cues from the patrons. But we only talked about this system once, and it was, you know, it was my kind of first time really looking at it, so I wasn't really able to fully appreciate how much I liked it. And in that, whatever, how long it's been, many months, you know, I've had an opportunity a couple times to look over some of the power sets and just been like so impressed with the design. And so it's always been something. Now, you know, obviously right now I'm not playing Pathfinder 2. To be honest with you, I'm not really, technically right now my campaign ended. My Forbidden Lands campaign, ended. So actually right now I'm not playing any RPGs. But you know, it, to me, and maybe and obviously I have GM, but when I was playing, you know, I played as a fight. My last campaign that I played in, I played a fighter and a cleric. I played 2 different characters, and let me tell you something. It was just like, this is so balanced and it works so well. But man, it just felt so samey and it felt so boring. This just feels exciting. I feel like you get enough choices to do everything that you want, but you're still feeling very limited, and it's just so good. It's just so good. To be fair, I do that with the Mind Thief, but I can't sit a mutated sentient rat on the Gloomhaven table. Now I can do it with the Psychic Mishi plushie. Mind Thief is a great class too. We only had one very briefly before a campaign ended, but like I'll be honest with you, like I was a Savas Cragheart, and then we killed enough of one type of creature that my character had to retire, which was fine. I actually liked the retirement thing, and then I had to bring a new character in, and a bunch of the damage dealer. We had unlocked a couple of the classes. I'm not going to like spoil them, but so other people had retired before me. And when they retired, they picked the new classes because they wanted to be the new classes. And then like we had no damage dealers anymore. So when my character required, I had to go from being this Savas Cragheart, who I had used the power of enhancement, and I had just like pimped the hell out of all my powers. And then I had to retire and I was like, well, the group doesn't have DPS anymore. So I was a scoundrel. I was a human scoundrel. And while the human scoundrel is very cool, very powerful, it was very powerful. Let me phrase it. It was very boring, and it was very, like, compared to the other cool classes in the game, the human scoundrel is such a bore. Even the brute, even the Inox or whatever brute is more fun than the scoundrel. I think the scoundrel is like the worst class in Gloomhaven. Anyways. I mean, I think Cragheart's the best. I think Cragheart's amongst the core classes, the ones that are unlocked from the beginning of the game. I think the Cragheart is the best class, hands down. I mean, the whole like tactical element of creating obstacles and boulders is so awesome. And then being able to like move them around and throw them and hurl people and use terrain as damage dealing objects, not to mention the AoEs. And I love the Cragheart. The Cragheart to me is like so cool. Dan is talking about one of the expansion classes, Music Note, Broken as Hell, and my favorite. Yeah. I really liked the Triple Spears and the Sun. Is it the Sunburst? I don't remember. Let me see here. I don't think I'm giving away too much here, but is it the sun? Yeah, the sun symbol. Smith had a sun symbol character. That's after he retired his spell weaver. He had the Sun Keeper, and that I thought that we loved it. It was like Pathfinder. It was our like 4th edition warlord or 4th edition melee cleric, and we loved it. It was really awesome. As for the what is it, the Soothsayer or something like that, was awesome. The original Eclipse was really good too. Yeah, so we had when Tim retired his, Tim was like a tinker. Was that what he originally was? Tim was the tinker. Is that what I'm thinking of? Is that like the healer damage? Yeah, Tim was originally the tinkerer, and then he became the night shroud, the night stalker, or whatever it's called. That was a cool class too. George, I don't think you ever retired. Is that right? I think you were still a brute at the end of the campaign. I think Lance stayed at our brute. Oh, right. Okay. That's how you had to retire. It was exploring the map and we never did that. We just kept going back to the same places. Nothing like getting thrown out of your play pattern and jumping to a jewel class. Never actually played alongside a scoundrel now that I think about it. Always a brute or a spellweaver. I think part of the thing I like about it is that it made the decisions of what, missions you went on interesting. It kind of created an additional level of complication to the game. And I also don't mind, the idea that, okay, you know what? My PC came out to kill 15 of these rat creatures. He did that. He's done, I will say, I know we're talking about, this was a stream about Eldamon, but one of the things that I loved the most about Gloomhaven, which I think they could have done more with, and I don't think that they did enough, was I loved the set them up and then knock them down of the elements. I loved when a player, a PC, could use an element, or you knew an enemy was going to use an element, and you would create strong fire or strong earth or strong wind or whatever, and then you had 2 rounds, right, because it would wane and then it would empty. And then another PC would have a power that they could consume that elemental energy for to do a bonus effect or do bonus damage. I thought that worked so well. I loved it. Anyways, I liked Gloomhaven, and I see Eldamon elements. I think it's that even just, but even more complex because it's a full ass RPG, right? I went to 2 cons where they were demoing the Gloomhaven TTRPG, and in both cases, I didn't get a chance to play it, and a lot of people said it wasn't really that great, so I don't really know. What are the updates on Dragontide? Patent pending. No, it's we have not made any significant progress. Bob has made some efforts, but he's been busy. I've been busy. Obviously, last couple of months have been crazy for me with me going to the doctor and hospital and, having to take some time off from work to deal with my mental health and all this other stuff. So unfortunately, Dragontide did not get work done in that time. So no massive updates as of yet, but as with all things, we want to keep pushing on it. I mean, Northern Reaches was supposed to launch in like March, and we launched it in like August. So, if we were supposed to launch Dragontide in like June, then maybe we'll do it in, December. Maybe we'll do it or January or something like that. 6 months later. Maybe that's our whole thing. 6. I believe in us too, or at least I'd like to. Listen, I take my responsibilities fairly seriously here. So, all right. Well, it's past 10 o'clock. We went a lot longer than I thought we were going to. That's just how much complexity there is in this. It's crazy. And that was just one power source. It's a deep system, folks, and I highly recommend checking it out. I think you'll enjoy it. If anything, it'll make you think, wow, I wish, that's cool. I like the Eldamon and I like the element avatar, but you're like, man, I wish there were cool things like this for the ranger, for the rogue, or like a rogue-like class or a ranger-like class. And I agree with you. I love it. Because again, if I want to play like dirt, simple, easy D20, I'm going to play, some OSR game. I'm going to play maybe 5e D&D, right? I get a couple power. I'm playing Pathfinder 2 because I want that kind of depth and I want that kind of complexity. And while I appreciate that there are some classes that aren't that complex in Pathfinder 2 to be something that everybody can enjoy, at the same time, I find that some of those classes can end up having fairly samey play patterns. And I find the flexibility of this, the tactical demands of this, not just tactical options, tactical demands of this, truly something inspired. So I think it's a fantastic resource, and I look forward to it. And it looks like we'll be doing another Eldamon stream since we did so well on our Super Chat goal. And as someone requested with their $50 Super Chat, I am going to make that produced version of the Eldamon rap, or not Eldamon rap, sorry, the Eldamon theme song that I alluded to after I made the song but never actually recorded the tracks. But we'll try to do that. Down Poke, I would love to see it. I mean, if I'm talking to the powers that be, and I like to think that I am, I would love to see Roll for Combat just like make a whole new set of classes that like kind of sort of basically replace most, if not all, of the core classes, right? Like they can give it a different name, like they can, I don't know, call it like, a battle priest instead of a cleric, or they can call it like a warrior instead of a fighter. But and it doesn't even have to necessarily be like the exact same thing as Eldamon, but like taking some of those same design concepts and taking some of the stuff that I've been talking about, like from Gloomhaven, from Tomb of Battle and stuff like that, like these sort of tactical resources working together, really requiring your team to do these tactical positioning and having a kind of high ceiling, lower floor, right? Where if you do the thing and you do it well, you're going to get really insane results. And if you kind of shit the bed and don't play smart, you're not going to get the same bang for your buck as something that's just kind of like, fire and forget autofocus. It's like, sometimes like, it's like the difference between like the red shell and the green shell, or like the blue shell, right? Like, yeah, I get it. The blue shell is very powerful. Of course, you're just going to use the blue shell. But the blue shell can feel cheap and boring after a while, right? Like the green shell, I like it because it takes a degree of skill. It requires some planning. Do I want to drop it as a mine? Do I want to try to shoot somebody in front of me? Do I want to bounce it around and create a moving hazard? Is it going to come back and bite me in the ass? There's a lot of do I want to drag it behind me? I don't know if this is an option in the later Mario Karts, but you could do it in the original Mario Kart. Do I want to drag the shell behind me to serve as a sort of force field against other incoming shells? So, I think it's really cool. Mark is excited for the track. Well, Mark, you're going to get it. Like I said, I want to try to find some good music, put some audio layering in effects, maybe do some little auto tune, put in some reverb, and we'll try to do it right. All right, folks. Well, thanks, everybody. This was a lot of fun, and it was kind of fun to dive back into Pathfinder 2 and get to something super duper, nitty-gritty, crunchy. Again, we're going to be doing a lot of Pathfinder 2 over the next couple of weeks as we move into the holidays. We've got War of the Immortals stream, specifically on the Mythic end of things. We want to finally take a look at the remaster, and that's going to be more of a group stream. I'm going to bring on some of my experts. I'm not even going to use air quotes. They are experts. They've been playing this game nonstop. And we're going to talk. We're going to talk about Pathfinder Core. I mean, really what we're going to do is we're going to take those initial class ratings that we did for Pathfinder 2 classes, and we're going to reclassify them. And we're going to say, did this class get better? What got worse? Did this move in the ranking? Does this meaningfully change the play experience? Better, worse, same? How does this rank in the overall perspective of the class? In other words, did the remaster do this class a disservice, or was it mostly neutral? And these are people who have played hundreds of hours with the new classes. So they're going to be the ones to really be able to speak to that. And we can even maybe talk about what we'd like to see for some classes that haven't gotten a remaster yet, but maybe should. And then secondly, we're also going to do a Pathfinder 2 remastered versus D&D 2024 remaster. In other words, kind of revisit one of our original streams and basically say, who did it better? What was the better revision? Was it remaster or was it 2024? Checking in on my break and caught the ending. Nice. Well, there you go. What's this? A Pathfinder channel? Well, Dan, I mean, we took a break from Pathfinder. Absolutely. I was burned out on it. I'm not going to lie. Number two, it felt stupid for me to talk about Pathfinder when like the game was changing with each new core release. And we knew Players Core 1 was coming out. We knew GM Core, Monster Core. And then we had to wait for Player Core 2, which obviously came out this past August. But, and then we might have started talking about it sooner. But, then I like I said, I had my mental breakdown. But it kind of felt silly to like talk about something that might going to be wasn't going to stick around for more than a couple months. And then wait. And then Player Core 2 did come out, but I'm not going to go talk about the Witch. I'm not going to go talk about these new classes. I haven't played them. Nobody's played them. I mean, it's one thing to white room it. It's another thing to look at the feats and read the feat list and say, yeah, this class is better. Or, yeah, this class sucks. I wanted people to get actual reps with these classes. Maybe not all levels 1 to 20. I mean, that's asking a lot, but at least get, 7 to 10 levels of play experience with these new classes to see the meaningful changes of the remaster and say, does this make a difference? Does this class play differently? Does playing the Barbarian with basically the free rage and the no -1 AC penalty actually make the Barbarian play differently? Do you actually feel like a strong, buffy, tank as opposed to kind of a glass cannon, which I kind of tend to think that you felt like? Yeah. So anyways, Pathfinder 2 stuff coming, but don't kid yourselves. There's going to be weird, dumb dissertations on games that no one's ever heard of and you'll never play. There's going to be first looks on small games that most people will never look at or buy or play. We're going to keep that stuff flowing, but we're also going to have some more guests. And we're going to have, like I said, we're going to have some Pathfinder 2 experts on the channel. Bob's going to come back. We're going to do another night school. I don't know what to call it. Night school advanced with Bob, where we take a look at a system with Bob and kind of go through it with him, make a character, explain the rules to him as I'm kind of explaining the rules to you. Donnie's going to come back to do a second Earth Dawn stream. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff going on here. I mean, first looks are very popular on this channel, and sometimes they do very well, sometimes they don't do so well, but for most part, they've done really well, and I enjoy doing them. I like being exposed to new RPGs myself. So. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. We'll be back Thursday. No idea what the stream topic is going to be, but stay frosty out there, and we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Good night, everybody.